Let's get rid of that stuff. Let's hear some real Richard. Real Richard, ladies and gentlemen. Gotta love real Richard. Terence, Cosmo, good morning, guys. How are you?
How's it going? You're back. You were absent yesterday.
I miss you guys when I'm gone. But I
Morning,
think it's
guys.
Cosmo, sir. Great to hear your voice.
Yeah, we missed you yesterday. Yesterday was a pretty
It
epic
was
space with everything going on.
it was a banger. Yeah. No, there was some excitement, some blood in the streets. It's crazy. The longer that I'm involved with Bitcoin, the less I feel those kind of things, and it's nice. It's actually nice to not freak out. So yeah, good stuff. Hey, Terrence, I know. Uh, I've patted you on the back and sung or sang your praises in these spaces, but do you wanna? I don't know if I've ever heard you really on a space kind of just give a little bit of a I don't know, like you're super humble, so a little brag sesh about your career, about your Bitcoin journey, or any of that stuff. I think oftentimes we have all these speakers and people just randomly stumble into these rooms and don't understand or know the background of a lot of these guys, like yourself, like Darkside, like others that really have an impressive track record and an impressive resume. You want to just do a little brag on yourself for a little bit, maybe your Bitcoin journey thrown in there?
I don't think anyone wants to hear that right now.
I do. I love to
The
hear
They
it.
people
want to
want
know
it. The
what's.
people want it.
I
The
don't
people
know.
have spoken.
I don't
We're
think
just
the
plebs, man.
people
We're
want
we're
that right
plebs.
now.
Come on, man. Brag a little bit. It's okay.
There, I don't. There's nothing to brag about. I'm just a
Let's go
pleb.
by a show of
I'm
hands or
I'm just a node. I'm just a
we're
node
all the
with
same.
all the
Yes.
Bitcoiners.
Come on, Terrence. We
Just
want to hear. The people are
verifying
speaking.
transactions. Hey, let's welcome Dark to the stage. Dark,
Let's do
Dark, you
that, and
did.
then let's go back to.
Well, yeah, we can come back. Dark did another one of his like 17-hour spaces yesterday,
I
I
love it,
feel.
man. Great work, Dark. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. I don't know about 17 hours. No, actually, we only did about 3 or 3.5, and it was a great space.
Indeed.
Yeah, that was a good one. I
Terrence, come
see.
on, buddy.
I,
Oblige
s-
me, please, sir,
I
daddy,
s-
whatever. Yeah.
um, I see BlackRock says that they expect the market to fall another 20% from here, which is interesting. I mean, they say that's going to be a great buying opportunity, but
Terrence is dodging. So
what?
I'll do this for him. Go
There's like
check out his
static on
profile.
your side.
Go check out his profile, and he has links in there. Check out his resume. He's got an impressive track record. I don't know. I like to give the listeners maybe a little peek at some of these great minds up here. Maybe we'll do the same with Dark one of these days. I know he's kind of showcased his resume at different times, but I definitely appreciate his background as well. We all come in here with different perspectives, and I think it's valuable. The experiences that we've each had, and there's so many intelligent listeners. Like I've talked in DMs with a lot of these guys, and I'm just so impressed with this community. Anyway, Terrence, back to you and whatever you were talking about, TradFi, BlackRock.
Well, no, I was
Sorry.
just saying I thought it was interesting that they said that they expect the market to fall another 20% from here. Um, you figure with all of their analysts and everywhere they have their fingers, they could know something, but ultimately maybe we've learned throughout history that no one really knows anything. Um,
Yeah, I think there's
That's a
this.
great point.
There's always a tendency too in these like really public spaces to be bullish when everybody else is bullish, and to be bearish when everybody else is bearish. Just so you're not the one that's kind of the contrarian, and people don't get upset with you when you make a wrong call. So I think also it might just be like, hey, like it might drop. If it does, don't be mad at me, kind of thing from like an institutional level. Um,
You know
it's kind
what?
of
Don't. Sorry, Cosmo. I didn't want to
go
jump all
ahead, go
over
ahead.
there. No, I was just going to echo both of those sentiments, really. We get Joe in here, who, in my estimation, often seems like he's bought into the current financial system more than the average Joe, pun intended. Sometimes I swear he believes in MMT and whatnot. And the crazy part is he's been correct. And in direct contrast to like guys like Lawrence Lepard and James Lavish and whatnot, the big crazy in all this that a lot of us see is the levers and the massaging of the current system, and they're able to use things like the money printer and tweaking rates and bailouts and all these different things. But I think often we forget that the greatest tool that they have is actually their words. They're able to manipulate people, change narratives. Words are the most popular tool in their toolbox because they actually control the psyche of men and control the collective will of the people. And I think that's one of the things that I see Bitcoin breaking. And the collective will of the people is saying, no, we're done with this crap. We're done with this matrix. We're done with, the obfuscation of our value. So love Bitcoin. Definitely agree with what you're saying. Like, getting people involved with FUD of markets and everything else. It's nice to just sit on the sidelines, eat the popcorn, and watch it all in slow mo. Terrence, I ended my TED talk there. I thought you'd just jump right in and be like, Dark, what's your thoughts on that? So I'll do that for you. Dark, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm a contrarian. So I think when I look at the current landscape, I think that Trump's doing just about everything right. Um, people think he's crazy. No, he's going to cut some good deals, right? And that will be extremely bullish for the U.S. economy. So I think if you could just look through the forest to the through the trees, I think we're going to see an amazing rally coming. Um,
I used to think Trump was crazy, and now I can see he's nuts. Now, I don't really like a ton of political talk, and I don't like a ton of just tradfi talk, but I think it's important. Both of those are super important, and I know a lot of like Bitcoin maxis don't like it as well. I definitely think there's a better of the two evils when it comes to political parties and power, but I also don't think that we have long-term solutions by voting harder or by a political party or any of the entities or structures that are currently in place in the United States and throughout the world. And I think really our best shot as humanity goes at having a positive, prosperous future is through the tool of Bitcoin. So I see Eggman came on the stage. I know he likes to chime in on everything political, and I'm not trying to diss you here, Eggy. I just think that our best shot is through the money, fixing the money, and I appreciate reading your commentary on politics. With that, good morning, Eggman. How are you?
Hey, I was coming in to get some tips from you OGs. I run a couple of trusts, or I'm the trustee on a couple of trusts, and I've got a presentation within the hour to Bernstein. And my guess is the guys that I'm going to interact with are absolute, embedded TradFi. That's the background I come from. And yes, politics will probably somewhere fit into the discussion, but where do you begin, to have a conversation with, the manager, Bernstein? And I'm assuming that, they have some background with Bitcoin, but it's, anyway, that's my
Hey,
plight.
Eggman, can you
Yeah.
can you give a 37-second of your background just so that people have you some context around where you're coming from?
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely, to be honest with you, I hate politics, but I'll get to how I got involved. I'm a TradFi guy. I started as a municipal bond analyst, and then went into corporates, and then went into project finance, and I helped some family build a private bank out in your neighborhood in Santa Monica. So I come from a very traditional finance background, and I'm an old dude who's a pleb. I'm about a year and a half into it. I put a lot of hours into it, but it's funny, just when I think I'm catching on, I learn a whole nother chapter about Bitcoin that I'm clueless. So I think I'm, for my vintage and my time near Bitcoin, I feel like I've done really well. And Bitcoin's been really good to me. And I do see the bigger picture. I see the potential, at least at my level, of where Bitcoin could transition us from the evil Fed. Because even though I come from a fixed income, a bond background, I can't stand the Fed. So that's what led me to Bitcoin. That make any
Nice.
sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So you're looking for tips and tricks before you go into this meeting to actually break the ice and how to present this to these folks, correct?
Yeah. And I think where I'm going to go with it, because my guess is they're going to, look at me like I got four eyes. But I'll have to feel out the audience and see to what extent any of them have done some homework and bought into it. But it
Hey,
is tough.
Eggman,
Oh
we
yeah,
do have a champion in actually cracking some of these difficult doors down in the form of Dom Bay up here. Dom, good
bring
morning,
it,
sir.
bring it.
How are you this morning?
I don't know about a champion, but I'm limping along. How you guys doing?
Great. How are you?
Dom, you still down in Texas?
No, I'm back. Yeah, I'm back. I'm back on the West Coast, man.
Any
How did how
tricks,
did
tips
uh how
for
did the BitBlock boom people
hey,
feel?
Terence, can we
Nope.
address Eggman first, and then we'll go back to the
Well,
triple
but
Bs?
Dom's coming on to the space. We haven't heard from him in a while. He was just
No,
at
no, I
BitBlock
know.
boom. We should get a
I get
quick
that. I
quick
get it,
report,
Terrence.
and then he can
Terrence,
speak to
you want to go
Eggman.
the other way around? Let's flip flop back to Eggman. I think Eggman's got to go do this presentation pretty soon, so I don't know if he's looking for icebreakers or
Eggman's in the lobby right now, Terrence.
he
He's
is.
he's
He's like sweating and he's got his suit on.
it's
He's like, oh
it's
damn,
not
what am I
that
gonna
bad.
say?
I got a little bit of time, but got about an hour.
Hey, Eggman. I would just say this, and I'm not in a position. This is a different animal, speaking to large funds. But one of the things with labor groups that I always tell folks that are going to pitch, um, their union is you don't have to convince folks that Bitcoin's the final ultimate solution. You just have to convince them that it's worth exploring. And if you can do that, um, that's a place to start. Like, hey, you don't need to debate that Bitcoin's, the ultimate asset, that it's the apex predator. Just simply, hey, do we think that Bitcoin at its current valuation, market cap, with everything that's going on, its adoption, mining, global activity, is it worth exploring? If the answer is yes, you can kick that door down. If the answer is no, then turn it on them to kind of like give you a reason why it's not. And if the answer simply is like, well, there's just a lot of scammers, then you can quickly point out, oh, okay, so you guys haven't looked into any information. You can't give me any actual metrics as to why this isn't worth looking at. And any fiduciary should at least be able to rifle off its market cap, adoption, what's the valuation of the industry surrounding Bitcoin, those things.
That's awesome. I think Saylor presented at their conference, and actually, I'll give some feedback to the group after I have this presentation to see to what extent any of them are listening, to what's going on, if they got their ear to the tracks on Bitcoin, or if they remain highly skeptical. So we'll see how it goes.
Awesome, man. Hey, Terrence, you want to flip it back to the Triple B conference?
Well, since we're now on Eggman, just Eggman, do you want any more context or advice? Or, I mean, it sounds like you've got
Sure.
everything you need. And I like that you brought up Saylor because I do think he tends, some of the maxis don't like his approach, but that's because he really is speaking to TradFi. He's speaking to legacy finance. Those people come in and they're still at a point, and rightfully so, where they look at Bitcoin as a trade. They look at it as just a way to increase their fiat. So coming to them about freedom money and crossing borders and fu to the government, that doesn't really get them anything. They're very fiat favored. So I like what Dom said, and they like math. They like charts,
Yeah.
and even if you were to just say, "Hey, look, this is just some widget," and let's just look at the performance of this widget, and now just know that they're not making any more widgets and that it's available globally to everyone, that starts to get the wheels turning. But Dom is right. You have to spark a little bit of curiosity, because they don't know, they don't necessarily have the problem that a lot of the other world has. So to them, that's not really a solution. They might intellectually get it if you go full,
Yeah.
hardcore Bitcoin OG. But I would say, as much as I hate going this approach, just start off with it as a tradable asset and let them see what it's doing. Talk about the historical performance of the ETFs, all the records that it's broken. That on any 4-year CAGR,
Yeah.
we continue to be positive. We now have 16 years of history. Blah blah blah, and then let them ask questions and just attack the FUD about I can't see it, I can't touch it. Where's the cash flow? What's it backed by? Because all of that is easily addressed.
Hey,
You know.
Terrence,
Oh,
I
go
think
ahead.
going
Go ahead.
along with that too is I've noticed just not just you personally that if somebody goes through the FUD themselves and actually does the homework, their conviction is a lot higher than writing my coattails of like, believe me, bro. So I think just getting the foot in the door, like Dom said, of like, hey guys, guess what? This thing seems too good to be true. FOMO them a little bit with like, hey, all the other kids are doing it. Like the word Bitcoin is in more boardroom meetings this year than ever before. So there's some sort of first mover advantage here. And don't take my word for it. Anything that scares you, any of these FUD points, put somebody on it. Like you got a team here, put Rick and Jim on it and say, hey guys, go out there and research these FUD points because if we're 3% certain that this is going to take off, then we want a 3% investment. I mean, worst case scenario, it's a 3% insurance policy. So, I mean, there's a lot of factors in this equation that, unless they're, unintelligent folks, which these people aren't for the most part, they'll get it and they'll do the legwork and you'll be the catalyst. Hopefully, you're wearing your orange tie. I see we have Bitcoin Pilot, another brilliant mind in here.
Hey guys. Hey Eggman, remind me what the audience is again.
It's Bernstein, and I'm actually kind of curious to see if they put any kind of emphasis on Bitcoin before I get there. But obviously, I'll report back where it stands.
Yeah. I just I've done a few of these and most of them have been fruitless. The ones that uh seem to get some interest is when you really just start talking about diversity or diversifying your portfolio and recognizing that this is a real asset that needs to be looked at, no longer just some some nerdy trick or some nerdy code thing. My my personal experience, the most successful I've been because people already know it, and I think just sort of try to tickle that FOMO with just showing other companies, you're not the first one anymore, and if you continue to sit in the sidelines, you're going to get left behind. I think Loren kind of already hit on that. And then the other one that has been relatively worked well in sort of situations like that has been the digital gold, and just saying, we've got an asset that's got $1.7 trillion in monetary value. We've got another one that's got 20 trillion. I believe, and a lot of Bitcoiners believe, it's going to overtake that someday. It's the Netflix to the digital or to the analog blockbuster. So you can imagine that's 10x right there before we even really get started, and then you can hit on some of this stuff. But for me, it's been digital gold and diversifying, and then showing the other parties that have already sort of adopted it. Don't even to really show performance, it's just having those names to say, hey, look, there's 100 other corporate entities at this point who have adopted Bitcoin. You're no longer the first, and if you wait any longer, you may be last. That's been my successful intros in situations like the one you're talking about.
Dom.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I was just going to say along those lines. Yeah, if and don't be afraid to point out to them that they don't need to take a huge step. Michigan, right? They invested, the Michigan Pension Fund invested a 6 million allocation to the ETFs. They managed just over 100 billion. So a minuscule get off zero kind of allocation for them. But what does it accomplish? Well, they definitely have some defense if Bitcoin performs incredibly well, like we think it may over the next 10 years, to say, hey, we didn't do nothing. We didn't not learn about this thing. So there's great defense there. It offers defense against the doomsdayers that go, I can't believe this fund got into this whole thing's a Ponzi and there's scammers everywhere. And it's like, hey, you seem crazy if you're talking about a 6 million allocation in $100+ billion portfolio. Like, let's relax. So it flips the script, and you can use Michigan as an example along with others of folks that didn't really ape in or make anything. It offers a ton of defense for the fund managers who will take heat when Bitcoin drops. With 100%, they will take heat. There's no doubt.
Also, I've listened to a lot of Dom's talks, and once he sparks their curiosity, tells them a few of the attributes about Bitcoin, he says, "Listen, if you don't want to pile in, you guys can all just have fun and stay poor." And then he just walks out. He just drops the mic and walks out of the room, and that's effective for some because they're like, "Wow, what's he doing?" Um,
Terence is joking. I'm not a have fun, stay poor guy.
No, he's a GFY guy.
I'm gonna do that. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna be like Asteroid. I'm just gonna drop the bomb on them.
No, but
Just walk out.
going back to just sort of the fiat brain that they still have. I think another approach to Eggman is saying like, look, you now can invest in a whole new technology, right? This is obviously where we are going, and lots of technologies because they weren't investable. They didn't really have their own tokens. You couldn't invest in the transition from candles to electricity, right? From horse buggies to the train, from airplanes to rockets, from libraries and typewriters and fax machines to the internet. And you would have to take a risk and take a flyer on a specific company that was trying to guess where this whole new technology space was going. But now you can actually invest in the actual technology. You can own a piece of this very scarce decentralized cyberspace. And I hate to talk about Bitcoin in this respect, but that starts to get them going because again, they have fiat mine.
Terrence, that's kind of where I came from too. I mean, being honest about it, I was that guy. I was a total, tradfi that wanted to see my number go up, and Sailor kind of got me with just, backing me into the typical Sailor presentation from Jump. It hooked me, and then you do the homework and you start to transition from. At this point, I literally don't own a stock. I literally don't own a bond. I'm completely, absolutely amazed at myself that that's my current position. And, like, I'm an old dude. So it was a pretty big jump in, call it less than 2 years.
Yeah, I can actually vouch for Eggman. Unfortunately, or fortunately, our old friend Fred Krueger, R.I.P., was very instrumental in Eggman's journey as well. And I did meet him down at that event. So he's the real deal. Good dude. I I'm a friend now, thankfully, and we converse quite frequently. So Eggman is the real deal, ladies and gentlemen. I can vouch for that. He's not some crazy anon or anything. Hey, Terrence, I think maybe we say good morning to a few other of the new speakers that hopped up here. Gary, good morning, sir. How are you? Puncher made it up, Macro. Hi, Gary.
Morning, guys. How's everybody doing?
Not too shabby. And then who else? Somebody else. Oh, Robert. Good morning, you guys. If you guys want to chime in on this one, fine. I think Terrence wanted to take us to Triple B, which also might be a great segue into the upcoming Vegas conference. Maybe we can hit that after. Terrence, do you still want Dom to go over the Block Boom event in Texas?
Well, I just think I mean, a lot of us didn't make it down there. I'm just curious what the signal was, what the consensus was,
The vibe.
anything great that came out of there. Yeah. And Dom is, I think, a double-time speaker now, two-time speaker down there. So
Holy shoot.
yeah,
Amazing.
he's the man. He goes
He
down there
is.
in his fire
Amaze
engine.
balls.
He runs the siren the whole way down. It's amazing.
Yeah, I would say I gave a very brief update this year. It was like 6 to 7 minutes, but good signal as always at BitBlock Boom. Such a good mix of like, plebs, industry folks that just to get to kind of talk about what they're working on building. Some commentary from folks was, hey, this almost feels like a bear market conference, which is fascinating that, at or around 80K, or at that time it was a little higher. That that's amazing, right? A bear feeling conference with Bitcoin in the 80s. For many of us that have been in the space a little bit, that's it's insane. But yeah, good conference. I got to sit down with Larry Lepard. I sat down with Parker Lewis and Stefan Livera and Terence. I also got to sit down. I'm going to post today on my YouTube. I sat down with Jason Lord from IATSE, who went through kind of the process for them and how things are going at IATSE, which for those who are listening, that's the first private sector union in the United States to put Bitcoin on the balance sheet. It's a 3,000 member union in Burbank. And it's you see the movie, right? You see that IATSE logo. That's the labor group that does the electrical lighting for the camera stuff and all the movies that you watch. So he went through that, and we talked about Terrence. I don't know if you know this, but the co-author for Ben McKenzie's book Easy Money did a hit piece on them. I'll send it to you, like adopting Bitcoin and tried to make it like this very, I thought it was hysterical because for those that know, like my nonprofit's a really humble nonprofit that, we're very small. But he kind of, it's classic. You have to read it, Terrence. I'll send it to you. But we talked about that. So good conference in BitBlock Boom. Gary does a great job. Gary Leland, and good times as always.
Awesome, Dom. Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I remember Pacific Bitcoin when it had dropped down to 17,000.
Oh, God.
I mean, that
Yes.
was a bear conference, yet everyone was
Yep.
so happy. They didn't care. They owned Bitcoin. And obviously, in hindsight, anyone would kill to travel back in time and grab Bitcoin at 17,000, which is what we're going to do in a few years for today's price.
Terrence grab those packs of Bitcoin trading cards everyone threw away that were first edition that have some cards in there that people are willing to pay like $1,000, right? And I don't know where the dumpster is from, because like Bitcoin trading cards was their first release, and people are like, "Oh, cool, some trading cards," toss. So people toss some dough out that conference.
Today's episode brought to you by Bitcoin trading cards. Just kidding. No, yeah, I remember that well. It was crazy. I think the FTX crash was going on, and we were partying like it was 1999. So it was exciting. I had a great time down there, and didn't skip a beat. It was just who knew? Good time to. Oh, we all knew it was a great time
Hey,
to buy.
quick thing, Loren, because I know
Yes,
Eggman has
please.
to leave before we rotate
Yes,
through all the other great people. Eggman, did I hear that you are local in Southern California?
you did not.
I actually lived out there. I was out there during 9/11. That was kind of wild.
Okay.
I've been in Colorado a long time. Went out there for a bit and I'm back, but I definitely love the area.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, I was just going to offer my help if you needed to, depending on the groups you're speaking to, because I speak to a lot of these groups too. And I thought I heard you say you were here in Santa Monica or LA or something.
Thanks,
But I'd
Terence.
be happy to join you if you needed anything. So,
Thanks, buddy. That's great.
okay. All right. Back to you, Lauren.
Hey, Terrence, let's do a little teaser of Vegas and just maybe initially we were talking about an event. I will say that there has been talks that we still may do something on Tuesday. So
Who's we? I don't know
we,
this
as in
we thing.
you and my dog, Ralphie, and no, us, the group of the Bitcoin Today fraternal clan of humble plebs. No, I really want to meet as many fellow plebs as possible. That's what I really get a charge out of. Like, there's so many amazing minds and people. I just want to meet everybody and shake their hands. That's to me
Are
the
you talking
value in
about
this.
hard forking from the conference, or you
So
just mean a
hard.
side event, like a side
I
chain?
want a side hard fork right in. No, I
Whoa.
actually I actually do not have a ticket to the main event. So, I have a plane ticket and a hotel room down in Vegas during that time. But I really would benefit more, I think, personally, from just meeting people, shaking hands, and having a drink with folks. um, Somebody has come forward and with the potential to sponsor an event for us, because this was the big struggle, was like, okay, where do we need a room, we need a, and we had like 45 different ideas and no good trigger puller. We were talking to some of the folks that live in Vegas, and it
So
was a
you're talking about
struggle.
like some pleb party? Like
Some pleb party, but specific to like our crew, like the regular crew of Bitcoin Today, the you know however many people listen um, to this spaces would be invited.
9,200
So
people listened yesterday.
exactly, yes, right.
Okay.
I didn't want to brag, but yeah, this is a growing fraternal crowd, of a community of fellow plebs. So with that said, it would be amazing, and we will keep you posted if this event transpires and whatnot. We will make further announcements, but I am super excited if for that opportunity to meet everybody, because I
Well,
that's
just
my
give us the
favorite.
date and time when you
Yeah.
have it. We don't need to hear about all this
So far, it
nonsense.
looks like
Okay.
if it happens, it would be Industry Day on Tuesday. So if you're trying to make plans to attend the event, try to squeeze in that day. So nothing set in stone, but tentatively, that is the green light. Hopefully, we'll know more by the end of this week. So with that, I don't know how many people are going to Vegas, but I hope a bunch. Maybe it'd be fun to have a Spaces live from Vegas, or maybe even a few days worth.
I think
Anyway,
Dom is going to speak there too.
oh,
Gary probably
nice.
will. Yeah. I mean,
Sweet. Yeah, I'd like to meet, like, I look at all the screen of all these different I don't know, avatars or whatever you call your I'd like to put a name and face and everything to a lot
I'm
of these
Dom's
things.
agent, so I'll be there backstage when he's
You're the producer, agent
talking. Yeah.
slash, yeah, sounds good.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll shut up. I think I've spoken enough.
Yes, that happened several months ago.
True. True. That's what you're here for, Terrence. Keep me in check, buddy. Or daddy. Hey, Terrence, you want to go around and say hi to some of the folks that just jumped up here?
Hello, everybody.
Well done. Well played. This guy.
Hello,
It's hard
Beck.
to pull
Now
one
we're
over
done.
on that guy. Great space, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow for Troy Cross. Troy Cross in the house tomorrow, everybody. Which is true. That part is true, right, Terrence? You got Troy on tomorrow?
Yeah, we got Troy Cross on tomorrow, the fellow from the BTC Policy Institute and philosopher. Everyone knows who he is. I learned a lot from him actually for mining and how it interacts with the environment and energy. So I'm
Is
excited
he
to.
a college professor
Yeah, over at I think he's still at Reed
up in Oregon?
up in Oregon. He's an Oregon guy. Yeah, so he will
Ah,
be at the Portland every Bitcoin is for Everyone festival on August 1st, which is
very
a
nice.
big 1 day event, which I think is sort of now taking the place of what Pacific Bitcoin used to be. A lot of the same people are up there, and
Really?
a lot of the big speakers, and they had their
When you say
inaugural.
big, when you say big,
Well, like last year was their first year. Jeff Booth was the keynote, and a lot of the Portland West Coast people.
Great Canadian, right there,
Yep,
Jeff Booth.
yep.
He doesn't have to travel far either.
And they're still putting together all of the speakers right now. And actually, if anyone's interested, they could reach out to me. There's 3 stages. There's going to be like workshop area where D++ is, and there's speakers BJ Boypati and Troy Cross, of course, will be there, and anyways, lots of others. They're just putting it together now, but it's becoming a big one-day event there. And
Super.
it's
Hey,
a
Terence, can
no.
I'd like to get to
What?
Robert eventually, but I did want to say good
Shoot.
morning to
Oh,
Puncher. Good morning, Puncher.
Good morning. I would like to
How
be
are
the
you, sir?
first. Great. I would like to be the first to congratulate everybody on surviving the great stock market crash of 2025. Got 10-year bond yields up 50 bips today. Stocks are up. Nothing's changed that I can see, but congratulations. Apparently, everything's back to normal and we've survived. So, nice job, everybody.
Puncher, are you mowing the lawn right now while on stage?
he's sitting on a John Deere right now.
There's
Yeah.
there's a guy who's doing my yard with the blower that's timely right 10 feet from me. So sorry about
I
that.
mean, we all
He's
multitask. It's fine. I'm just curious.
he's
You're
flying a
gonna
Huey.
mess your lines up, if you don't pay attention.
All good. All good.
We also have Eric. Eric Rice is up here. Good morning, Eric.
Hey guys, how we doing?
Not too shabby. How you doing, sir?
Oh man, another day with air in my lungs. Couldn't ask for more. And we survived.
Be-
I still think it's
yeah,
funny that
yeah.
we're supposed to have this monster crash on Monday, and here we are today trading like a meme coin, up down, roller coaster.
Yes. No, great
I,
day to be
I,
alive.
I would love to hear what's changed. Maybe I was sleeping and missed it.
Yeah, me too.
The narrative has changed. Bitcoin Pilot, you got your hand up?
Yeah, I just was scrolling through Twitter and I just saw uh an article that I think everybody should take a look at. This weekend I met a new guy who was interested in Bitcoin. He wanted to know, why Bitcoin, not the other coins. And I don't know how to explain Bitcoin without making it, a global once in a species kind of event. This guy was looking for, help me pick the best horse. And I'm talking about Sumerian cuneiform and how the first writing of humanity was to write a
You
ledger.
gave
And
him
he's
the
looking at me like
Putin answer.
well, yeah, he's got me. He's looking at me like I got 3 heads. And I'm like, do you understand how important this is? Like, it is literally the answer to a question that's been asked since the beginning of humanity. And sure enough, Jesse Myers wrote an article today going even further back, and I just want to point everybody kind of in that direction. It's like a 15-minute read. Basically comes to the conclusion that Bitcoin is not just once in a lifetime, not just once in a century, but truly once in a species, and that we as human beings are what makes us human beings is our fondness and our desire to find and keep scarce assets throughout human history. And we've seen that through our archaeology. But what truly makes us human is this desire to keep and hold a truly scarce asset, and that Bitcoin is the answer to not a question, which I always say, an answer to a question we've been asked for 6,500 years. He makes the claim we've been asking the question for 142,000 years. It talks a lot about Nick Szabo shelling out. If you haven't read that, go there. 2002, way before Bitcoin, and just sort of it ties that thread from Neanderthal through Homo sapien to today, and how no, this is not just replacing gold; it's replacing every form of thing that we have tried to use as money forever and ever and ever. And if you're worried about a dip from 84K to 78K, you got to do some more reading.
It's replacing chairs, I heard as well.
Chairs are way overrated. Croesus, smart guy, Stanford grad, picked up a dog in my neck of the woods once upon a time. No, we got to get Jesse on. He's the real deal. Big brain in that head of his for sure.
I know, Lauren, you've been making fun of me on my co-host duties today, but to be honest, I've been spinning through um, different sets of 12 words, seed words. I'm speaking to the USC Bitcoin Club, but tomorrow this will be my third time now. Um, and they've only had 3 meetings, so I tend to be the only guest they can get, I guess. But it's great. I love it. They all want to learn about, seed words, addresses, wallets, keys, and what the differences are with all of those. And I decided I'm going to seed a 12-word wallet throughout my talk. So that's why I keep randomly generating a new set of 12 words, because I'm trying to find the right 12 words that will make sense that I can integrate into the talk. And then when I get to the end, I'll be like, so hope you've been paying attention to the slides and everything, because all 12 words are right there. And then, put like $100 there.
Use the
Well,
bacon wallet.
Terrence, why not just pick your own 12 words? Why you randomly generate them?
Well, I could, but it makes it easier for me, just the way my wallet's set up. And
Yeah. But I'm just saying you could take your 2,000 words, pick whatever 12 you want, and there you go.
yeah,
Just as quote unquote random as you would otherwise.
true. You just have to be careful and make sure you choose one of the right checksums, because once you get to your 12th word, you cannot just choose whatever word you want.
You can generate your own checksum from any words on a seed signer. You can just throw them in there and it'll generate the checksum for you.
Yeah, you can do it sort of in a backwards way, I guess. But I'm having them all download Blue wallets, because those are open source and they're just so simple. It's a great teaching tool, and then I'll have them all send Bitcoin back and forth to each other. But anyway, so that's kind of fun.
Brilliant. That is brilliant, Terence. Touche, sir. I love the idea. I think maybe we roll it over to Robert, just to talk about the old TradFi, the market,
Talk
the
about the
recovery.
hollowing out of the middle
Yeah,
class, the
exactly.
silent
Depression,
depression. Yes,
I will.
drugs, homelessness.
I will
Yeah,
have you know that
despair.
I have
the
hope,
white
ladies and
the
gentlemen.
whitehouse.gov official, the literal whitehouse.gov website published a speech that Stephen Moran gave, and if you guys read this, it literally reads like a post of mine from last year. It's kind of wild. Like you add that in with kind of everything else that's
The
going
White
on, it
House is
kind of
stealing
spooky.
infra's material,
Yeah,
everybody.
it's
I
it's
think there's
starting.
some copyright infringement
It
here.
feels strange. Like, I'm gonna be honest, it doesn't feel good. It feels kind of odd and like
Will
off-putting
you
or
throw that
unsettling.
post up in the nest?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd definitely like to read that
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah. He basically goes. He makes the argument that the dollar, all the issues that kind of I've spoken about before, but the dollar's overvaluation is causing a lot of the issues we're seeing. And I go back and forth between how I think they're going to go about addressing that. Whether or not they really do want a strong dollar, I'm still kind of like up in there 50-50. But yeah, it was definitely interesting to see that. And then also China, overnight, it came out that they're looking to devalue their currency by 15 to 30%. And today, it broke the reference rate, and is the weakest level in I think 2 or 3 years. And so they're probably going. Basically, everyone needs to devalue. Any developed economy, whether it's the U.S., Europe, Canada, Australia, China, Japan, everyone needs a devaluation in real terms against Bitcoin, gold, stuff like that. And then I think that that's going to be kind of the next big story is the Mar-a-Lago Accord piece. But yeah, today VIX came in. It's still above 40. But it came in a bit. Spreads came in a bit, but are still pretty, much wider than they were. It's all move index. I mean, the real story is not what was going on in equities yesterday in S&P or QQQ. That was not the big story. Was what was going on in bonds, in my opinion. The Puncher referred to it, but the 10-year had a 30 basis point move. So Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific time is when futures open. And so I started watching then, and like everything just gapped down like massive. Like I think S&P futures were down like 4.5%. NASDAQ futures were down like 5%. It opened up super, everything was just gapping super low. And then through that kind of afternoon, evening on Sunday, Monday morning for Asia, the dollar was selling off and yields were rising, right? Yields opened up much lower, but basically from open, bonds got sold off, and so yields moved higher basically from the get-go, and the dollar was moving lower too. And the things that were the currency, the safe haven bid, the things that were kind of looking strong were gold. We know Bitcoin started to sell off, so Bitcoin Sunday evening was not looking great. But gold, the yen, and the Swiss franc. So the dollar normally serves the purpose of like when everything is gapping, 2, 3, 4, 5% lower, and it's kind of chaos. The dollar has normally served the safety trade, the safe haven trade, but it wasn't. The dollar was selling off and yields were rising. So what that means is, if you're a foreigner and you owned a bond, a treasury bond, when you sell that bond or short it, selling pressure, that pushes the yield higher. So it's an inverse relationship. And so what it looked like was foreigners were selling US treasuries. They were getting dollars, right? If you're a Japanese business guy or the Japanese government, you have a treasury bond, you sell it, well, now you have dollars. But if you don't want dollars, if you want yen, if you are worried about the dollar, you will then sell that dollar, putting downward pressure also on the dollar. And so that's what we were seeing. And then we were seeing more of that earlier today. It's kind of reversed, but we've been seeing that, I guess, not in US session. So not in kind of, right now, the kind of New York session, but in Europe and Asia, I've been noticing this for a month or so. Selling of bonds, so yield higher, selling of the dollar, dollar lower, and equities lower. And to me, that's really like indicative of kind of a pretty significant shift that's going on away from the dollar. And yeah, like it's interesting to me that the 10-year moved 30 bips on some of the worst. I mean, we are facing, like, at least the consensus view is we are facing the most negative growth shock since a novel virus caused a worldwide pandemic that brought everything to a screeching halt. We're facing the biggest growth scare since then, and yields were rising at the long end of the curve. So, 10, 20, 30-year bonds were rising. The yield was rising. And not just rising a little bit, but rising by, 25, 30, 35 basis points. I've never seen a move that crazy in treasury bonds. And so then this morning, there's a measure of volatility, just like the VIX we have for stocks, for the S&P. We have a measure like that, but for treasury bonds, called the MOVE Index. And that measures, treasury market volatility. And that thing printed 137. And the creator of the index, Harley Bassman, real famous bond trader, the creators, he said that anything over 130 is basically like danger zone. And anything over 140 is serious dysfunction. And so, yeah, we're clearly getting very close to where there's some serious issues in the treasury market. And so I would just say, kind of be prepared. Like, I know equities are up today, kind of, they're looking pretty weak right now, but yeah, just don't, I would say, kind of be prepared. I don't think it's over. I think there's gonna be a lot of volatility ahead.
A lot of vol. Looks like Joe just popped in the room. Dark's in here. I don't know if either one of you guys want to comment on that. Morning, Joe.
Good good morning. What piece do you want me to comment on?
Oh, it's completely up to you. I don't know how much of it you heard, or if you wanted to chime in on any of it. We were just kind of trying to go over the, I don't know what you want to call
Yeah.
it,
Well,
last 3 days in the markets.
I think there's a fundamental move that triggered the bond market sell-off. It makes a ton of sense now, and that's basically the clarity we've got for Bessent now. And I think I just read the third interview where he basically outlined exactly what's going on, which makes, I think that is basically calming the equity market temporarily, and it is leading to a sell-off in the bond market, because the bond market trade was primarily driven on, the recession fears, we're going to fly the plane into the mountain. So we have a lot more clarity today than we did yesterday, and I think that is helping to stabilize the equity market in the short run. But Infra's right. Like, I mean, listen, if the tariffs stay on at the current levels, we're going to get a recession. We're going to get a broad sell-off in risky assets. I think you're going to see a very dire economic portrait unless we can get what I think Besson is alluding to, which is this move in terms of negotiations. So I don't know if you talked about Besson's comments at all or just got dived into them, but he's repeating the same thing, which is always a clue that they're now on the same talking page in terms of the reporting that's come out of the weekend and so forth.
Yeah, Joe, do you
No,
think that there's discord? Do you think that there's kind of two camps emerging in the administration, kind of hawk and dove on the tariffs?
Well, there always were. There always were. The question is who's in control. And there's that public reporting about Besson flying to Florida over the weekend to lobby the Trump to tame his message. And let me just tell you a few things he said on CNBC. Have you guys talked about this? I don't want to bore you, but have you gone through
no,
this?
we were hitting on everything but this, so feel free.
It's like the most important topic of the day, guys.
We start
Joe,
slow. We
Joe,
start slow. We get the room worked up. We get a bunch of people in here, and then we start hitting the
Well,
topic of
well,
the
yeah,
du
Joe,
jour.
Joe, we
Joe,
were
before
talking
you,
about your thoughts on how you're so fixated on this bond rollover thing, and you're always talking
Oh my
about I got to
God.
roll over the bonds and like.
Roll over the bonds. Yeah. We rolled 7.8. I just checked $7.8 trillion in debt last year, but this year 9 is going to present a challenge.
hey,
Sorry.
do you guys, Joe, do you mind? Do
There,
you mind if we go real high level before we dial in on like what Percent said or what somebody else said he said
Yeah, high level. Let's
like
do it.
Robert, high level. This is to my pea brain. So Trump wanted to come in and fix the bigger problems, which are the twin deficits, Griffin's dilemma, the hollowing out of the middle class, and a lot of his voting base is MAGA now, blue collar, who probably don't own a ton of stocks, and to the extent they do, they're willing to go through that pain to have a better economy and better job prospects and things like that. So what ended up happening was they threatened tariffs with the intent to drive down bond yields, and so that they can refinance the debt at a cheaper rate, and consequently drive down stocks, um, so that maybe stock flows would go into bonds.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I
Yeah,
disagree
go
with
ahead.
like the last 10 seconds. So anyway, go ahead.
All right, Joe. Can I get through it? I'm
Yeah,
trying
yeah.
to
I'm
lay it
sorry.
out, and then we can argue till cows come home. So then, what ended up happening, however, was um, potentially because China or others were selling their bonds as a result of all this, that bond yields actually rose, so defeating the initial purpose. And now stocks are up. Um, layered on top of that, no nation states like China, who were formerly, maybe a decade ago, buying a lot of our U.S. Treasuries, are no longer doing that. But instead, they're buying stocks, which was driving up stock market. And now maybe they're not even doing that. They're looking for other safe havens outside of our stock market, which may have also driven down stock prices as well. And you said they were buying the Swiss franc and things like that. So
and the
where am I
yen.
wrong?
Yeah.
Like infra, can you correct me? And then
Yeah,
we'll.
I probably am more in Joe's camp on the intention behind a lot of this stuff. I don't think that that this is all some grand strategy to refi the debt. I think it's kind of a happy accident, but I don't think it's the primary driver of their decisions. But yeah, no, basically,
So
like
implicit
with
in
the
that, and Robert, sorry, implicit in that is they don't have a need to drive down to refinance the
well, no,
debt to drive down interest rates.
they no, they definitely need lower rates for sure. I agree there. I just don't think it's the primary goal, like the primary driver of their actions. But no, they certainly need. I mean, look, I was going to mention this week we have 100 to 110 billion dollars worth of auctions. And this is just kind of a normal thing now. Like that's a lot of money. And so yeah, so that'll be something to watch. But yeah, basically, like the dollar, the way we got the dollar out to the rest of the world, that they are dependent, they're strung out, they're addicted to dollars. The way we got them their dollars to feed their habit is by running a trade deficit. And if you listen to what they've been talking about, what the Dissent, Moran, these guys are in the administration are saying, they're saying that we're not trying to decrease the trade deficit. We're not trying to improve it. We're trying to eliminate it. And Trump himself has also kind of indicated this. Like, I don't want a reduced trade deficit with China. I want a flat, right? I don't want which is
makes
kind
no
of
sense.
insane.
It makes no sense.
Yeah,
It's economically illiterate.
yeah.
But let's just talk about this debt thing.
Well,
Okay,
doesn't it make sense if you no longer want to be the world reserve currency?
No, it wouldn't make sense under it's currency agnostic. So let's just go one thing, okay? Because we're all over the place. We're like the 1,000 shiny objects in the room. We have to chase all of them simultaneously. One quick thing that we need to focus on, this argument, which is in my view total nonsense about the debt rolling. Last year we rolled more than $7 trillion worth of debt. Okay, and the majority of it is rolled at the front end. Okay, so if your goal was to lower long end rates so you could lock that in, we know that's not the immediate goal, meaning the next 2 quarters, because Besson said he's going to keep the QRA in terms of issuance relatively similar to what Yellen was doing. So just make that real simple for folks. They were issuing a lot of short-term paper. That short-term paper constantly has to be rolled. You're not locking in 10-year plus. They're going to do that for the rest of the year. So if the goal was this year we want to lower interest rates, and people are saying, well, rates are higher now, or by the way, they're basically flat since December. The 10-year's been sitting at 4.2 roughly there since December. We sold off and went closer to 5, but then we came back down, and then we went lower, and then we're bouncing around in the same range. We're the same range we were in the beginning of March. If the
Joe,
goal
real
was to do,
quick. So
if
the
the
fact that
goal
it raised 50 basis points in a day, they don't care.
it raised 50 basis points a day, you're talking about the sell
Like
off
the
from
10, I'm talking about
3.9.
the 10-year. The 10-year, they don't care
Yeah,
about the 10-year. They just care about
the reason you don't care is because you don't have the auctions coming to market in the short run. In a few days, yeah. I mean, bonds can bounce around all over the place, right? And they're trying to price in growth, they're trying to price in recession, they're trying to price in a trade deal, which a lot of people are struggling to understand. All of those things affect whether we're going to have a recession, whether there's going to be more spending, very complex international relationships with respect to currency, all the things Infra talks about. So bouncing around in high volatility, which, by the way, we had a similar move, trillions of dollars of move in the equity market, which is a massive asset, right? The S&P had one of the craziest days trading.
It was like 5
That,
trillion in 20
yeah,
minutes.
yeah, that's just volatility, guys. That's just volatility. So like people are saying, oh, they tried to lower the rates and now they're failed. No, not necessarily. If you trigger a recession, rates are coming way down. It's just they don't move in a straight line. They bounce around. There's massive capital allocators that are pushing it up and down with derivatives. So that's sort of a different story. But the issue of like all of this is about lowering the yield. Well, then why aren't you issuing duration to the marketplace? And when are you going to issue duration? Because it doesn't really matter if let's say you bring the 10-year down to 3.5 tomorrow. If you don't issue any duration, you don't lock in any debt in the roll, it's a meaningless, right? Because by the time
So
you
you
actually
have to have an auction for it to be meaningful. You have to
wait,
sell bonds in
yeah,
order for it to be meaningful.
you have to sell the bonds at a certain coupon, right? So I never bought this argument that like, oh, we're trying to lower the yield. You want to lower the yield, actually focus on spending. The spending problem is probably one of the biggest things. And by the way, that's contributing to some of the additional sticky inflation. You still are running. I mean, I see my friend George Noble in the audience. You're still running these 6 to 7% deficit GDP. I mean, you don't think that has any relationship with the stickiness of inflation when you're doing massive government outlays? So to me, I don't really buy that logic at all. But one thing I want to just point out real quick before I yield the mic here, because I hate droning on. Besson said today, and I'm using his words. He said, my advice to other countries is that after you got the shock and awe of the Liberation Day, and that was really key that he used that phrase. He used it 3 times now in different interviews. The shock and awe, come to the table with negotiations. And then he emphasized how 70 countries have come to the table with negotiations. And he was pressed a bit further. Well, what are you trying to negotiate? Trying to negotiate tariffs? Are you trying to negotiate, bringing jobs back? Are you trying to non-tariff barriers to trade, like subsidies and different things? He said all options are on the table. all options. And he was specifically asked about Europe and the value-added tax, and he said, "Listen, that's on the table. We want Europe to remove its VAT tax because it's not just tariffs; it's other issues." So, what I think is happening here is Trump, the showman, right? The P.T. Barnum did this big ostentatious display on Liberation Day to try to get everybody into the fold. Some people he clearly has issues with, like China. He wants certain things from them, but he really wants to negotiate with everybody. He wants to try to leave his mark on negotiating with and everything's on the table. There are no hard and fast things that he's trying to achieve within
including
individual actions.
security agreements, everything,
Yeah. I
everything.
think everything. This is his overture to be the art of the deal maker, right? Like, he wants to have everybody come to him, kiss the ring, and he's going to try to extract a pound of flesh. It may work in some cases, it may fail in some cases, but what I think that was critical about that is that I don't think that there is this masterful plan that this is exactly what we want to pacify us. I think it's different on a case by case basis, country by country basis. And what Besson said is, like, look, everything's going to settle down in a few weeks once we start getting some of these deals. That may or may not be true. I'm just telling you if you piece together what he's saying, in conclusion, he wants a grand session of negotiations with all of these actors to see what we can extract from them. Let's see if it works.
Okay, so to the extent that this is a grand reordering of everything globally, would you say if that is the desired effect, that to a large extent they got everybody's attention and saved China, who we're going tit for tat with everybody's kind of paying attention, and now they can move on to phase two, whatever that is?
Yeah, the most important player at the table is saying, "Go pound sand. We're not backing down," and
And
that's the
and
scary part.
devaluing and devaluing their currency, right? This is what I was talking. Joe and I were like the only people saying that tariffs are not inflationary, like back last year, right? And part of the reason for that was, I said during the first term, all you had to do is look at the won dollar cross, and you could see that that's what they did. They weakened their currency against the dollar to offset the cost of the tariff, and so basically, and this is what Moran argues, in that world where the currency weakens against the dollar, it is not the American, consumer that is paying the tariff. Figure of speech is not the American side that's paying the tariff. You are taxing the savings of the tariffed country, and that's exactly what happened in the first term. And they're doing it. It looks like they're set to do it again.
Yeah, would you agree with the notion that nothing cures inflation in goods like deflation in assets? I mean, generally speaking, you start to see a collapse in the stock market, that's going to trickle down to deflation in the economy because of the
Well,
wealth effect.
yeah, I mean, yeah, I do think that in the U.S., Besant is very, very outspoken about this, very clear. He sounds like me, but he's saying all the same things that we've been talking about with hyper financialization of the economy, the wealth distribution, and wealth inequality. All of these things like are clearly on his mind and clearly part of the calculus. I mean, he mentioned in his interview with Tucker, the top 10% own. He said 88. My research was 92, but the vast majority of U.S. equities, and it's clearly part of their plan that like they don't. If there is a put, it's not in the equity market. They understand that the equity market is part of the problem. The overvaluation and kind of structural bid. If you read Moran's speech, the structural bid under U.S. dollar assets is part of the problem that they're trying to fix.
Absolutely. So to those who are saying he's stupid, it's an idiotic plan, it seems to me like phase one of the plan was get everybody's attention, increase volatility, increase uncertainty, and bring people to the table.
Yeah, I agree
Successful or
with.
not successful?
Yeah, no, I agree with Joe that I think that it is very similar to I was 13, I think, when we invaded Iraq, and I remember the early stages of it on CNN, right, where it was just the intent was to just overwhelm them. The intent of we just bombed the living hell out of them in an effort to demoralize them, in an effort to kind of sow uncertainty and fear, right? Like we just lit up the entire country. And I think that, there's a degree to which that is part of their plan. I still think that that Trump is more serious about really truly reshoring than people give him credit for. Some of his doubters give him credit for. But again, I keep going back to, like, I think the tariffs are only the first phase of this entire thing. Like, we still haven't even we haven't even started talking about the monetary side of things. We haven't even started talking about the dollar.
Right, let's talk about the strategy, right? Like, you got 12 hours. What is it? 12 hours, 10 hours? Somebody correct me here. You get 12 hours until you get 100% tariffs on China, which makes no sense, right? But like they're calling his bluff.
It
They're
makes
saying, you want
sense,
to mess
Joe.
around?
Joe, it makes sense. It makes sense if you think about it. It makes plenty of sense.
No, but but look, I want to know Puncher's view on this, because they have signaled, hell no, we're not backing down, and this is
Well,
how. Uh,
they weren't gonna collapse like a cheap suit, Joe. Like, all I'm saying is, to all the TradFi guys who are crying like stuck pigs, who are now apparently happy today that this is all behind them, or so they think. And they say, what I hear repeatedly is, there's no plan. They're a bunch of idiots, except for percent.
It's not. It's not behind. It's not behind. But are you looking at what's going on with the equity market? They've given up like 2% of the gains. Bitcoin, which tends to
But
lead, is
Joe,
selling off.
if the
Okay, it's
plan
not. It's
is
not
to
done.
create,
I don't know where.
if the plan is to create chaos, I would say that it's pretty effective so far. That's all I'm saying.
If the plan is to create chaos, you can just stand outside and yell gibberish. That's going to create chaos. That's not
Actually,
a
no,
plan.
no, it won't. That won't create the
Hey,
chaos
no,
that they're
all you have
looking
to do
for.
to
Okay.
cause chaos is stand at a podium and say, "Good afternoon."
Yeah, if I may, I think that, like, the fact that China's response to this was very telling, right? They could have said, "Hey, we've been trying to reorient our economy more towards domestic consumption. We clearly have had our issues with our own kind of, economy here for a while, for over a year at least. We are, we know that if some nerd like me knows kind of Moran's work and Besant and these guys with Triffin's Dilemma and the dollar and all these things, like, guaranteed that the leaders in China understand these concepts. You would think that if they were, ready to play ball, they would go, okay, look, we know what this is all about. Like, we get it. We're well aware of how you guys feel about this and this and this. And, we know the end stage of this is some kind of, new Plaza Accord, right? A Mar-a-Lago Accord, something like that. So let's just do it. Let's get it over with. Let's just do it. We know where you guys are headed. But they didn't do that. They, start kind of talking. Well, they removed the reference rate, or lowered it, let it start to devalue, and they have made it clear publicly that they're considering, quote unquote, a devaluation up to 30%. So their approach is like, okay, well, F you, like, we'll just devalue our currency and continue to try and export our way out of deflation, which is, the exact opposite of what Trump is trying to accomplish in terms of balancing trade. Because, I mentioned that if the Chinese currency devalues versus the dollar, it's not as inflationary for American consumers. But the other side of that coin is that the tariff doesn't really have any effect other than taxing the savings, right?
Infra, I'm sorry. Forget about inflation. You're going to collapse growth. You're going to trigger a recession. The fact that people are focused on consumer prices and inflation,
Oh, I
if
agree.
these
I agree.
tariffs stick,
Yeah, I agree.
you're going to be talking about how low can prices go. That's going to be the discussion, not inflation.
Yeah, I agree. And
But if you want to fix the problems that are only going to get worse, is a recession? I mean, it seems to me like that's inevitable anyway.
well, yeah,
How
it's needed.
does a recession hurts poor people? Okay, they're the first ones to lose their jobs. Number one.
Joe,
Number
there's
two, you
no
blow out the
pain-free
deficit.
solution to 30 years of
I,
clean
I I
deficits.
agree with you, my friend. I agree with you. There is no pain-free solution. But sometimes, right, when you say go cold turkey, you kill the patient. And if your goal is to kill the patient, go for it. I mean, I don't think that's a good strategy. I think this is going to
Yeah,
be
Well, maybe
disastrous.
yeah,
maybe the
Puncher.
I
patient
think
has
this leads
stage
to
4
I think
pancreatic.
it leads to a democratic takeover in the midterms, and potentially you have a turn towards socialism and AOC
Hey
in
guys,
the next presidential.
I'm gonna just jump in real quick. Just housekeeping. Sorry, Rusty's been down there with his hand up. We got Simon on the stage, and I'm sure others may want to interject here because this conversation is getting really intriguing. So we'll roll to Rusty, but just throw your hand up and we'll definitely try to get you worked into the equation here. Sorry, Rusty,
Well,
go ahead.
let me ask one more
Yeah.
question, and
Okay,
I'll
Rusty,
stop.
jam in right behind here when you can.
So is the assertion, and I just want to get look, I'm not advocating one way or the other. I just want to understand both sides of the argument here. Is the assertion that we're in a knife fight in a phone booth with China, and they've already stabbed us in the heart, like it's a fait accompli, or do we have other levers to pull, and we'll see how it plays out, but it's not over yet. And I can't imagine that there's not a plan with guys like Scott Bessent and all the very intelligent people around Donald Trump, that they haven't kind of played this out. Now, maybe China didn't react initially the way they thought they were going to, but there's like a trigger and action matrix, and they what if this kind of to death, and we're just going to have to sit tight and see what happens. But at least they're trying to act on a problem that was only going to get worse.
Joe,
Rusty.
did you want to speak to that, or
Yeah,
I honestly, yeah, go ahead, Joe. Sorry.
just briefly, I don't want to monopolize the mic. The only thing is this, okay? When you say there's a plan, I think that there are multiple actors within the administration which have varied plans. They have a disagreement. Goes back to what Inpro's talking about there's hawks and there's doves, right? In any sufficiently large administration, you've got a whole chorus of voices, all of which do not agree on the same thing. And guess who is the decider? There's one. It's Donald Trump.
Or Donald Trump's boss.
Yeah, so I was just gonna say, like, your beginning question there, Puncher, was perfect, right? You're trying to understand both sides, and I think that's what everyone should do. Simon, he has amazing points, and we heard Peter Schiff and who was ever in the room heard him talking about gold the other night, like, and exactly what Emperor said. You got doves and hawks going on here. And that's the big kicker. There's a lot that can happen. There's a lot of levers to pull. How bad do we want to go? I don't know. And that is one guy, Trump, who's going to decide that. And you got to figure it out, but that's why I love Bitcoin too, right? So, trying to understand all this, it is a lot. But at the same time, you got to look at the TradFi stuff and you got to look at Bitcoin. I mean, you got to look at it all, and just keep your ear to the ground is all I was going to say.
Puncher, if I could, Joe is right, and even Luke Gromen, who is pretty big Bitcoin bull, is saying this, right, which is the order of operations matters, because if you do not delever the debt in real terms, if you don't run negative real rates, inflate it away, whatever term you want to use, you don't address that first, and you put the country into a sharp recession, where the deficit increases by 600, 700, 800 basis points as a share of GDP, you create a terminal situation. You kill the patient. That I think Joe's right there, and this is kind of the thing that we've always, Bitcoin people have always talked about, which is like the big print kind of thesis. There nothing stops this train. However, whatever term you want to use, but the order of operations matters, and if they cause too much of if growth contracts too rapidly or too sharply, without the debt getting delevered, it gets like you get yourself into a really, really bad situation pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I've listened to everything Luke Gromen has said. Every time he pops up, he's on my must listen to. And I'm actually watching all this with amusement, like sitting on the sidelines owning most of my net worth in Bitcoin. But what order of operations would you say to the team here that they messed up?
Well,
What should they have done
what
first?
I was telling people, like my hypothesis of kind of what I would do was you run negative real rates through some kind of quasi yield curve control. You probably don't call it yield curve control, but you get the real interest rate on treasuries negative, and you use that. You could have the secondary benefit of using that to fund the immense cost of reindustrializing. I agree with Joe that it is not a quick or easy or cheap prospect to truly reindustrialize. So you kill two birds with one stone. You run negative real rates, you delever the debt, but you're also using some kind of subsidy or a government program to basically finance the reindustrialization. You kill two birds with one stone. Then you can move on to tariffs, and hopefully those negative real rates also weaken the dollar, which makes your exports finally competitive again. I mean, the real reason U.S. exports are uncompetitive is the kind of overvaluation of the dollar. So you need to address that at some point. You need a weaker dollar. Otherwise, tariffs don't mean anything. They're meaningless. They're kind of it's a moot point.
So the assumption is that Scott Bessent, who was integral in the, collapsing of the British pound, is unaware of this order of operations. You would have to say, or that he lost the
No,
argument.
I don't think he's. Besant especially understands this. The problem is that it would be you would be because of how we know Powell is. You would basically need to, and I don't even know. This is not my arena. I don't know how you go about this, but you'd basically need like a hostile takeover of the Federal Reserve in order to really implement this. Because Powell has come out very clearly for a long time now. It kind of clearly opposed holding strong against Trump. You can tell Powell sees Trump as like an enemy that he's got to battle and always win out over. So it's a complicated.
Well, that right there tells you that the Fed isn't interested in the best interest of the United States of America and its citizens. They're at odds because the Fed is the enemy.
Yeah,
I think in a room full
Yeah,
of Bitcoiners, you're probably not going to get any opposition to that take.
Yeah.
I was playing the crowd.
Yeah, I don't think the Fed gives two shits about the American people at any level. I think they care about their member banks, and I think they're a European institution. So
Okay, so when you have an enemy that's acting like your friend, the enemies, and you expose them for who they are.
absolutely, and I've been saying all along, the war. I mean, before even Trump took office, I said the real war that's coming is the war between Trump and the Fed. And we've been talking about this subject for months now. So far as remember, Joe has a bet with Asteroid on the length, the duration of Powell's reign of terror. So we'll see how it plays out.
I'm glad we solved that problem.
See, I
Solving the
think
world's problems one step at a time.
What do
Punchy,
you think is going to
Punchy,
happen
you
with the
you have
Fed?
some issues with your connection at times. By the way, sorry. Go ahead, Joe.
No, I'm just. What do you think is going to happen with the Fed? What do you think is the mission with the Fed? What was that?
They're going to win.
I'm clearly
They're going to
I'm
serve the profits
clearly,
of their shareholders, the banks.
I'm clearly defining the enemy. Von Clausewitz. First, you must define the enemy, and the enemy is the Fed. What is that fight going to look like? I don't know, but at least we know who's in one corner and who's in the other corner.
I'm not sure we
Well,
do
Yeah,
though. You know my theory. I think
yeah.
Trump's got bosses.
Well,
Oh my
so
God,
far
I
we've
just
heard.
got some clarity, Simon. Please don't come in with the 3 layers.
I tell you what though, what I would say is, I think this has been probably one of the most intellectually stimulating things that we've ever had to experience together. And I don't think I've ever experienced people that I consider really, really smart, but on complete opposite sides of, economic theories or, organizing principles, and none of them agree. And so, to me, the only conclusion and I think we've all heard every type of theory under the sun. I've got my own. Joe's got his own. Punch's got his own. Dark's got his own. Everyone's got their own. But I can tell you this is about the least amount of consensus I have ever seen around something that impacts everybody in the world. And the conclusion that I come to that is that the strategy was chaos, not incompetence. And I think that both the Fed and Trump are working someone else's agenda.
Well, that's what world wars are, right? Complete chaos and
What?
destruction.
I think this was
And
to avoid.
that is the fourth turning.
No, I think this was to avoid World War Three. So the business as usual was World War Three. We were headed to World War Three.
That's what I'm saying,
This
Simon.
is
You're saying exactly what
this is
I'm saying.
destruction to avoid World War Three. Recognize that there are power structures at other places in the world, and re-collaborate capital based upon a recognition of where real power is today, and avoid World War Three. And now I think, I think we're having massive escalation to de-escalate on the wars, and the previous path, if this tariff war didn't happen, and we didn't get this chaos, and the whole world can see how economically connected and entangled every part of this ecosystem is, and that if we went to World War III, everybody would have lost, including those that normally profit from wars. Personally, I think we're seeing that firsthand, and now it's a humbling experience of the world recognizing what their genuine economic place is, based upon real finance, not fake finance, not debt-based finance, not financialized securitization and terrorism, but real surpluses, real economic power, and real production power. That's what I think we're experiencing, and people
But
realize.
Simon, that's preferable. TBD, right? But the idea is that's preferable than losing hundreds of millions of people in a kinetic conflict, only to reestablish the same banking powers in the same position
Yeah,
afterward.
true. But imagine you are a global financial institution, BlackRock, and you are invested everywhere. Then you would like to change the world to a bit of equilibrium, and you would like all of your investments to perform in a more healthy environment where one force, i.e., the biggest bully in the world, cannot disrupt your equilibrium and your stability of your investments. And the old neocon model of stimulate economy through war, I think there's a recognition that that's not the path forward, especially given that we've only got 10 years to figure out globally what this robotics and AI race looks like. And there is a equilibrium factor called Bitcoin that has a decentralized regulating force. Not that I think many people have figured that out, but I do think BlackRock got some very, very powerful people into Bitcoin on purpose. And the fact that gold's going up, and Bitcoin, a lot of very powerful financiers got into Bitcoin because of the Bitcoin ETF. I think they were preparing their clients for some kind of recollaboration to make sure that their investments were not so lopsided and destroyed by World War III.
Some heavy stuff.
Let's see. We got a hand. Let's go to Luke.
Hey guys, how you guys doing? Yeah, question. So these tariffs look like they go into effect today, like the 104% on China. How long do you think it takes before China blinks on this, or they come to the table? Joe, anyone? Infra?
China will keep going.
Yeah, I think the U.S.
They got
blinks
3 trillion.
personally.
I think China's got $3 trillion of reserves. It knows that America needs to import its goods. It can't rebuild its manufacturing base
Yeah.
in the next 3 years.
There's an even simpler reason. The Chinese government has very tight authoritarian control, whereas the U.S. doesn't, and
Yeah,
that's a
so
significant.
For life, right? Donald Trump's not leader for
That's
life.
a fact.
yeah, so how long do you think, like, because that can't go on for very long, 100%. I mean, things would just start falling apart everywhere, right?
It's shock and awe. This is the negotiation strategy. We'll see if it works out for him. I think personally, I do not think it
So you
will.
think within a month?
Well,
Within a month?
listen,
One week?
if the tariffs are in effect for a month, You're going to be talking about S&P 500 at 4,000. You're talking about Bitcoin at 40, 50K. You're talking about massive deleveraging across the system. Probably problems beginning to emerge in the Treasury market. I don't think these can stay on for a month. But let's see.
But don't you think this is a COVID-style wealth distribution? I mean, people think that this is distribution to the middle class. This is the businesses in America that need to import will have to pay that tariff, and it will take away their margin. But Apple's going to be sat around the table with Trump negotiating tax credits or whatever
They
structure
already
and
have,
rebuilding.
and they've moved
Yeah,
supply chains to India. But there's limits to how fast you can move. China does still a significant amount of trade with the United States, it's going to take time. The notion that this is a short run solution to a 30-year problem, I think, is just completely wrong. You're not going to fix this stuff overnight. The question is, again, if you're in this poker game. Nobody. I think Trump thinks like I don't want my intentions or my point of concessions to be known. And the question is, how close can we get to them? And I also think what you can do, to avoid this, which they've shown time and time again, is punt. I do not believe that there's no discussion of a 90-day pause. It was fake news yesterday, but they clearly talked about this as a strategy at some point to say, okay, let's just float that we're making progress and punt. And that's another way you get around. You just kick it over for 30 days while we reevaluate. That's classic Trump. Classic.
Well, that's the thing.
But Joe, he's also in a political reality. Like, if you're serious about doing this, which I think he is, punting just gets you closer to the midterms. And if you lose the House and Senate, now it's become 10x harder, right?
Well,
I
here's
think
the
he's
interesting
serious.
thing to your point, Puncher, is that there's already Republicans that are breaking ranks, right? Tom Tillis in North Carolina. You've got two others that I can't remember the names that said today that this tariff war is a big mistake. Big business has sway over individual House seats and individual Senate seats that they contribute to, and you will continue to see people in his own party breaking ranks with him. And I think that's far more meaningful than any Democrat saying anything. He doesn't care what Democrats say.
I mean, you see Elon, right? Like, he's already breaking too. He's like, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a host of important businessmen that are doing that already. So, I mean, you have to be clear. I mean, it's not a mistake that Larry Fink comes out yesterday and says they're probably going to be hiking interest rates, that he would put it back on the table.
Joe, how does this impact the charity basketball match in Vegas for Bitcoin Magazine Vegas conference? Just I'm thinking
Dombe with the real questions, the ones that
I'm
count.
I'm
Hit
Heavy
us.
I'm
hitters.
thinking I'm thinking air pumps. I'm thinking, premium basketballs like athletic shoes. What are we looking at?
I do need to get a new pair of kicks for the basketball game. So, yeah, it's going to be hurt in my pocketbook, I think.
It's going to be made in Vietnam.
Yeah, let's go to Taylor. You got your hand up?
Yeah, hey, I just wanted to ask everyone here on the panel. So, as far as timelines for all of this resolving goes, do none of you believe that the 4th of July 2026 is a significant date?
Enlighten
That's
us. What's that?
Independence Day, right? Yeah, it'll be a great
That,
day. I'm looking
that
forward
is
to it.
the 250th Independence Day.
Yeah, I usually eat a hot dog on Independence Day,
I'm
so
talking
I'm
about
looking forward.
I'm talking about a timeline, Joe, like I stated, timeline for all of this if
Oh,
there's a
oh,
plan to resolve by.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. I don't pretend to have a key grasp on the timeline. I just know that the longer this goes on, the more damaging and destructive it's going to be.
So someone else mentioned Elon Musk a minute ago. Did you guys not see that Elon Musk tweeted that it's fake news that he's leaving?
Yeah. Yeah, like what we're seeing is an emergence or reemergence of the kind of free trade, globalist Republicans. You have a populist. I mean, here's the thing to remember: like when I started paying attention to politics in 2002, 2003, the people opposed to globalism were not the Republicans; it was the Democrats. And you can find clips of Schumer, Pelosi, all these kind of people speaking out against some of the kind of imbalances or whatever you want to call it between China and the U.S. In particular. But like the China shock, was already causing enough problems that the Democrats were kind of the prime opponents to globalism. You moved into this era where, largely speaking, the bipartisan consensus was pro-globalist and
Who did
free
that?
trade.
Who brought the Democratic Party to the party of globalism?
Clinton.
Yes, the New Deal Democrats, the Clinton, actually not New Deal, New Democrats, is how they call it. The New Democrat coalition, led by Al Gore and Bill Clinton and Harkin and others.
The neoliberals.
They founded
The
the
same one,
neoliberals.
the same ones on the Epstein list.
Okay, so the Department of Government Efficiency. It is a department created with an end date. That end date is in the executive order establishing the Department of Government Efficiency. And that day is the 4th of July, 2026.
Taylor, how much have they cut? It's like 100 billion. How much have they cut? Do you know?
Depends on who you believe.
150 on the website.
That's
on the debt clock.
No, I mean just on the Doge website, on their actual website.
Yeah.
I mean, guys, the stock market decline just in like a couple days wiped out more capital gains, missed capital gains revenue than that will ever be.
Yeah.
Couldn't
Again,
agree more.
I don't agree that the number of what they're cutting is the important part of what Doge is doing. It is
Wait a second. Their own numbers are wrong now?
No, I'm not talking about the numbers. I don't think that that's their important mission. I think their important mission is getting all these systems updated and really essentially like cutting off the legs of the fraud machine.
But the debt is the big issue here, no? Like they keep saying we want to solve the debt problem, but if they
You
can't
can't solve the debt. You can't solve the debt problem. The dollar is debt. You can't pay down the debt. You have to roll it over.
Okay, well,
Well, and
get the deficit down then. I mean,
no, even taking kind of the theoretical fundamental that Simon is talking about, debt-based fractional reserve, even taking that out of the picture. If you balance a budget, and this is why I was always skeptical and kind of pushed back. If you balance the budget, you would the resulting GDP contraction from balancing the budget would be worse than COVID. It would be worse than the GFC.
I'm talking about
it would crash the world. It would be an Armageddon if America paid down its debt.
Yeah, and then we get a socialist in 28. We get Bernie Sanders in there with AOC.
And the funny thing is all
Fed.
politicians pretend they want to pay down the debt, which means they're either ignorant or they're lying. Which one?
No. They're trying to basically appeal to political interests. That's why. And actually, I disagree. I
They're lying then.
I think that majority of recent politicians, they aren't truly concerned about the debt. They'll talk about things like waste, fraud, and abuse tangentially, but usually they're talking about, I want to eliminate taxes on this, or I want to give handouts on this. There are very few. The electorate has just gotten so used to running structural deficits, it doesn't even poll well. It's not even a top issue of concern for most people. The top issues of concern are inflation. Inflation is like the issue that is still at the top of most of the polling data.
Yeah, but Joe, they can, like, you can all even taking kind of the nominal headline number out, right? Like just say the headline number is constant. You can, through policy, trade policy and domestic policy, you can shift who is getting prioritized, who is benefiting, and this is what they're talking about. This wide divergence between capital and labor and the wealth inequality and all these things that we've spoken about so much. You could implement tariffs, use the tariff revenue to, no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, which benefits the bottom 50%. Meanwhile, I will remind everyone that these tax cuts for billionaires, they're talking about creating a new tax bracket for millionaires and raising the tax on millionaires.
But
So like,
hold on. You can't have it both ways. If the tariffs are designed to bring back manufacturing, then they're not going to generate a huge amount of revenue. If the tariffs are designed to generate revenue, and meaning that trade outside the United States is going to continue at high levels, they are not going to bring back jobs. It's either or. Either your goal is to bring back jobs, which thereby defeats your revenue, or vice versa. You
yeah,
have
I
to
agree.
pick one.
Yeah,
Or
I
it's to
agree. I
take
agree. I
both.
don't
No,
disagree. I'm just saying that in the meantime, if tariffs are raising 200, 300, 400, 500 billion dollars worth of revenue, that is money that can offset tax cuts for a certain, to kind of to your point, Joe,
Yeah, so it's
every
budget neutral.
politician,
It's budget neutral.
yeah, every politician is just trying to they're not trying to change the entire pie. They're just trying to kind of like
the
redraw the lines
the
of
do,
the pie.
the Doge clock on the debt clock is 294 billion.
So nothing basically in the budget.
Yeah, but
And,
again,
and by the way, that's 290 billion over. Is it 5 years, infra? 5 years is what they're projecting. 290.
Yeah, it's like 3
So
or 5.
so
Yeah.
so so annually, you're talking about what, like 30 billion? Like I think we wasted more on
Which is
like
like 10 days of interest.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like okay.
No, you shut down USAID and NED. That was very important for global peace.
When are we going to reform the
yeah, that's what
entitlements?
I'm saying. I don't
Medicare,
think
Social Security.
I don't believe that the number is the important part. It's shutting down all of this massive corrupt Democrat money laundering machine. That's what's
The
important.
structure. You mean the
Do
That's right.
structure?
you
The
think?
apparatus.
Okay, let me ask you something, Taylor, on that. Do you believe that shutting off USAID is going to stop the fraud and corruption among Democrats and the
No, I
left?
believe that USAID is a small potatoes first test step, and that they're going to continue and
So
shut
And
down the IRS.
it's not Democrats. It's bi-party CIA.
okay,
It's
bipartisan
bipartisan
corruption. That's fine.
for sure.
But
It's
if
bipartisan.
it's a small test step. Let's just note
It's a small
historically.
test step. So they're going to abolish large amounts of the federal government. They're going to take down as a ton of the programs, try to bring the government size to pre 1913 levels. They're going to abolish the
Never going to
income tax.
happen.
They're going to
It's never going
eliminate
to
the
happen.
IRS.
You can't.
And then on the 4th of July, 2026, they are going to declare independence from the Federal Reserve.
You can't bring down substantially the size of government without taking care of Medicare, Social Security, interest on the debt, and Medicaid, and the military spending. I forgot military. That is where you have to go. If you're not doing
Every
that, you're
and
not
Joe,
cutting
one
anything.
Joe, he just
every one of
announced a
which would be
$1 trillion defense budget. He's like, yeah, we're gonna,
yeah, he just
yeah,
raised it.
we're gonna hit $1 trillion, and it's like, okay, this is not moving in the direction of smaller government, but
You already spent double
We had
your increase in defense
record.
budget. You've already sent to Israel.
Yeah, and by the way, we're going to run a record deficit GDP on a monthly basis this month, and it's likely to eclipse that next month because of the drawdown in the equity market. So the government expenditures and outlays are getting going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, as a share of GDP, which is what matters, right? Like it's not the 1 trillion, 2 trillion deficit. It's as a percent of GDP that really matters, because the GDP is the balance sheet capacity.
Yep. I think it's a big surge in the beginning, and then it comes. But we'll see.
Look, I'll say I just spoke to Jason. What's his last name? Jason Burchak, something like that. He's got a podcast, Wall Street for every street, or Wall Street for everyone, or something like that, on YouTube. The links in my profile, but
Wall Street for Main Street. I think I know
Wall
what you're
Street for
talking
Main
about.
Street.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wall Street for Main Street. He's super smart guy. Lives outside of DC, and like to Taylor's point, he basically told in so many words said that the scale of the fraud and the way.
Oh, we lost you, Robert.
Oh,
Robert,
by
I
the
tell
way, it looks.
We
go
lost
Joe.
Joe too.
Nope.
I tell you one thing though. Imagine creating this much carnage in this moment when there's talks around Bitcoin strategic reserves, there's talk about everything, and just wasting this absolute carnage and returning back to the status quo. so that some people can maintain their stock value and real estate value and extract more wealth from everybody.
That's right.
Yeah.
I believe strongly that a big piece of this all is that Pandora's box is open, that the world gets pushed onto a Bitcoin standard, and that the world superpowers compete.
Listen, man, I love your enthusiasm.
Can you
I
hear
give
me
it
now?
less than 1%, but I'd love it to happen. I'd definitely celebrate if it did.
Yeah, go ahead, Joe.
I just think it's
I was
game theory, Simon. I think that if the U.S. doesn't do it, then
Man, we're having some glitches
I'm
today.
having
Joe,
issues here.
Joe, you're back. I think
Yeah,
somebody
you
else.
had a
Oh,
breaking.
Robert was in the void as well, and I think we lost. And Taylor, I don't hear anymore either. So I think we're glitching out for a second. Joe, you're
Oh,
I
back. Go
think Joe
ahead,
was trying
sir.
to get some
yeah.
breaking news.
I was just going to say there's a couple of headlines coming across that if there's further escalation by Donald Trump and the reckless trade tariff policy, China is prepared to double down on extreme measures against the United States. The market is, by the way, ready to turn negative again. The stock market, after having it, they were at one point it was up 3%, but man, China seems awfully bellicose in terms of their rhetoric here. They don't seem intimidated quite one bit.
How could this
They're not
end?
intimidated.
Hey, Joe, how could this be resolved with both China and America saving face and saying, like,
Mar-a-Lago Accord.
Well, I don't think that's what global capital wants. I think they want a change. I don't think it's
Yeah, Simon,
yeah.
your theory is that this is all purposeful, that this is going to result in, I think you said, regional blocks. Is that right?
Yes.
Which, by the way, is going to be a disaster for the United States economy. That will be terrible because of the construction of our import trade deficit. So anyway, well,
Yeah, but
I hope you're
but it
wrong.
will allow people to live and stop getting murdered, and it will stop all the problem, like many of the whole world giving all their money to the U.S. government to kill them. So I think that's a bit more important, personally.
well, that's the balancing act here too. Is like if this doesn't go according to plan and people start pushing too hard, the midterms are hosed, and then we're gonna get AOC in 28. So hopefully it all works out.
Yeah, did you hear she's starting that exploratory committee for president?
What?
Yeah,
You
I
can't
was
be
I was reading
serious.
about that yesterday.
No,
No,
but
I mean she's
that's
going around with she's making this tour with Bernie Sanders. There's a couple articles printed about this. Bernie Sanders is, I think, trying to crown her the heir apparent to his movement.
But that's exactly what would happen if this thing unraveled in a way that people didn't expect and took a nosedive. That's what would happen. They would come in and say, like, we're gonna give free money to everyone, like whatever, free help, that whole thing. Just it's gonna pivot far left.
It's a downside to democracy, right? China
Free
doesn't have
money
to
to
worry about
everyone
that.
is a good. Free money to everyone is a good way of getting adoption for your stablecoin.
Well, if you like the fourth turning, which I hear a lot of people talk about in these Bitcoin rooms, Neil Howe was asked on a podcast about this, and he says naturally the millennial generation and even beneath them the Zoomers that are coming of age, he believes that the most logical path for them to take is a turn towards socialism because they've been disenfranchised and left out of the system, and that they. Now, I don't know if he's right. I'm just telling you that's his view, and I know people like the fourth turning logic.
Yeah, and that was the Federal Reserve's goal.
The first turning that follows a fourth turning in the prior seculums typically move towards collectivist cultures. And you think about what happened after the Civil War, what happened after World War II, where you had common ethos across so that is likely to happen again. We don't know exactly what that common ethos is going to be, but I would say individual wealth accumulation will probably be out of vogue in the next first turning. That's my opinion.
I'm kind of
Yeah.
with I'm with Simon on like the long term with robots, AI, all this stuff. I feel like it ends up in some type of UBI in 15 years or whenever it is.
Well, if you keep the debt-based Ponzi scheme going, that's where it ends up. It's baked into the system. It's in the protocol. It's in the proof of. It's in the code.
What's the alternative to UBI? I'm not a big fan of it, but what's the alternative?
Hard money.
Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah, but hard money's good. Hard money's good for the top half of the bell curve, the backside of the bell curve. Too many of them just aren't going to be able to play in that hard money game, and you can't have a society where you leave half the people behind. It doesn't work.
We have a society
Yeah,
where
so
we
That's
leave
what
90%
the Federal Reserve System
behind
is
right
designed.
now.
That's what the Federal Reserve System is designed to do when you create money as credit, and it's a Ponzi. It's wealth extraction through those closest to the 0% interest loan or the money creation.
yeah. So
No,
what are
no doubt that hard money is part of it. What I'm saying is, UBI can be done through hard money taxation and redistribution. Again, I'm not advocating for it. I'm asking what's the better plan, and how are you going to get the back half of the bell curve to participate in society in a way where they will not revolt?
Bit
You need to
bonds.
you need to
Have you looked?
reform. You need to
Have you looked
reform.
at the?
How about giving bit bonds a shot? How about
Bit bonds.
yeah? Like I still keep coming back to all the problems I've been listening to for the last hour. All of them seem to be solved by bit bonds. And if you do
So if you have a IQ of 80, you're going to be buying bit bonds. I don't think that fixes
no,
it
You
for
you
you,
need
no,
which is kind of
the
Thomas's
real
point,
answer,
right?
Thomas, is you need to completely revamp and fix the entire entrepreneurial system and how you start countries and how you start businesses in this country, and you also need to revamp the education system. Our education system at every level, and I live in a good area, right? It's a disaster. You have to fix how it's funded. You have to give people opportunities that are born in areas with a terrible education system. I mean, you have to blow the whole thing up. You want real structural reform. You always have to focus on the next generation, and you have to break the cycles that they're in. And if you don't do that, you're not going to get anywhere.
So,
Joe,
the education system has
Joe, why
been.
don't you try something out? All right. I'm sat and listened to you bullshit for about an hour and 20 minutes. Okay. I open my mouth and I literally get out 4 words before you interrupt and continue blathering on for another hour and a half.
Because everyone's heard you
What?
blather on about bit bonds 18 times.
I haven't
Let's
said a
talk
word.
about a real thing that actually makes sense.
We're in a Bitcoin space.
You're
Hey guys,
such an
it's
arrogant,
not is
you're an
it Throwdown
arrogant,
Thursday? Because I'll make the
condescending little
announcements and ring the
bitch.
bell first, and then we'll
Look,
go.
you know what we
No,
should do? You know what we should do?
what Throwdown Thursdays?
Instead of having a powder puff basketball game, why don't we have a hockey game? Why don't we have a hockey game? Let's play a real sport. Come on, Joe. Strap a pair of steak knives on your feet and get on the ice.
come on, guys.
Enough is
But
enough,
we
man.
are in we
I
are
mean,
in a
how
Bitcoin space.
condescending a little
So
bitch do you have to be? Just
we are
shut the
we are in
fuck
a.
up.
Well,
Like,
to be fair,
literally,
we are
try
in a
it.
Bitcoin space.
Try to just shut up and listen for 5 minutes.
We've all
Then you
heard
can
you
go
talk
on and
about bit
blather on.
bonds. It's not adding anything of value. Bit bonds don't fix structural inequalities in society. Come on, man, grow up.
But pushing stocks up is the answer.
No, it's not, Simon. I agree with
No,
you.
it's
Pushing
Jay,
stocks up is not the answer.
Jay Powell's the solution. He's the greatest Fed chair of all times. And we all
Pushing
listen to
stocks
your
up,
bullshit.
pushing
We
stocks
listen
up
to
is
your
not the
bullshit
answer either,
over
Simon.
and over
You
and
just
over again.
dark, take it chill pill. Okay, just relax. Okay, Simon, I never said
Well,
pushing
what
stock price up is in there's huge structural inequalities.
you
Finding
post
changing the way that
you actually put a post out yesterday asking X to limit the ability of a speaker to 1 minute.
yeah,
And
it's a good
there's
rule.
no
It's a good
single
rule because people go
right,
on and
then
on about
follow it. Why
conspiracy
don't
I'd
you
be
try
theories.
fucked.
it?
I'd be fucked.
Why don't you try it, Joe?
I'm probably one of the quickest speakers up here to get my points
Oh,
out.
please.
I don't blather on
Child,
about
please.
Mossad and every single solution under the sun that has to tie back to Israel. Okay, I don't do that.
Hey guys, I see a hand. Let's just take a moment and we'll
Oh,
come
Terrence
back.
is back. Thank
I
God. Terrence, I thought maybe you were still messing with your
well,
seed
I thought
words.
you was more of your jibber
I
jabber.
was trying to get my belt off to get in the room and, daddy
No,
in
no,
with
no.
his belt
Listen,
to,
there's a
yeah.
lot of very smart, way
No, I
smarter
know.
than any of us people talking on here,
That
and I
is
love to
true.
hear all these
I
different
There's
think
sides.
only
I think
one smart
I
person
think
up here. His name's Joe. We
uh,
should, you know what we should do? We should all just kick back.
No,
We should rename it Bitcoin Joe and just have him speak every day for 4 hours and listen to him tell us how the Fed is the greatest thing since sliced
Hey, nine
bread and
times
let
out of
Jay
ten, they
I
Powell
asked me
think
to
I
solve
actually
our
think
to
Joe
come up on
problems.
the stage, man. They actually asked me to come up on the stage. It's not unlike you, who's in every space blathering on about nonsense. Okay, I get summoned to the stage. How many times do they summon Dark to
I
the stage?
literally have
Zero.
sat, I have literally sat here and
Yeah,
listened
maybe
for
we
an
move to the
hour and a
hands,
half.
huh? We got Playful and Thomas that have
come
their
on. I
hands
think I
up.
think I think Joe wants me to talk about Mossad and Israel for half an hour.
Ooh, that sounds good. I
As
think
This is
entertaining as
Cafe
great.
this
This is
is.
great entertaining. Come on, guys,
Cosmo,
let
I
it
think
roll.
Cafe Joe has a nicer ring to it, don't you?
well, yeah, and we can come back to this, but Playful has been patient, and she doesn't come to the stage
Thanks,
Agreed.
much.
Playful. Hey, we
So,
appreciate you coming up here, Playful.
Hey, thank you so much. Really appreciate the conversation and your providing me a little space to perhaps bring a different perspective to things. I've been working on this issue about motivation and incentives for many years, and it's related to play and play science. I worked with the National Institute for Play for many years and have my own little LLC around it, and it's about software design. But that's for another time. What I'd like to talk about is um, the mention to what the alternative to UBI might be. And I have some ideas around that I thought I'd share if that's okay. Um, we have to talk about incentive systems and motivation. And while incentive systems are related to, financial constructs, motivation a lot of times is more psychological. And I'd like to explore that a little bit with you. Current gaming, gamification, and really the way our institutions are now designed has everything to do with behaviorism. And I don't know if you folks, I know you have tech backgrounds, but behaviorism came out of the 1950s with B.F. Skinner, who did a lot of uh, experiments on caged animals and provided reward systems, typically um, food or whatnot for various behaviors. And that behaviorism is also known as operant conditioning. Well, that has ended up providing the foundation to human to computer design. And it was established a long time ago. Why? Because we can measure behavioral outcomes that way. But as you know, um, we're not like our pet dogs and our pets that can be just motivated through simple reward systems and trained in that capacity. Humans are much more intricate and um, involved and multi-layered. And in fact, when we're just exposed to behaviorism all the time, it erodes our
Hey,
inner,
Playful. I
yeah,
hate to jump in here and step you on you, but can you summarize in like 37 seconds or less?
sure. The behaviorism is stunting our intrinsic motivations and our inner locus of control. And so if we're looking at a UBI, that basically makes us dependent upon the existing system.
I
And
love it.
what I'd like to propose is that we design differently for intrinsic motivation vis-a-vis extrinsic reward systems.
I love it. I 100% agree. I think that is one of the beauties of Bitcoin, and one of the things I like about this community is a lot of motivations. What incentivizes people to do things? I think that is the key, the root at which we're speaking of all of this stuff. I think we'll go to the hands next. Gary's finally made it back up again. I know he's been popping on and off. Thomas has patiently had his hand up, and then after that, we'll go to macro. Thomas.
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm going through the political season right now because I got to run for office, and anyway, it's having fun doing that. But one thing is I've been exposed to a little bit more getting outside is and talking to folks is, and I'll just step back. The society we live in is going through tremendous stress and changes. And I think, Bitcoin is a huge piece of a potential longer term solution, but it's not the only thing. When you go back to the Nashville keynote that Saylor offered, he even alluded to that, which I thought was he dropped the line in, but it was probably not well received. Which basically said Bitcoin solves half of our problems. The other half is important as well, and I think it's important to think through the other half of the problems that are societal in nature, social, sociological. We talked about education reform, UBI, and things like that, because ultimately the new solution, whatever we end up with this by 2030 or a few years from now, it's going to have to all mesh together and make sense. And I'm very concerned about where the society is headed. I think Bitcoin can help out a lot, but I am very worried about the other half of the equation for our society.
Yeah, that's awesome. It reminds me of something I heard. Saifedean said he was talking about the analogy of having like a dirty house, how everything's kind of broken. Like step one is to kind of fix the sewage system with there's a bunch of shit on the floor, and then you can get to fixing the rest of the house. So like, Bitcoin doesn't fix everything, but it can get you to a place where you can start, repairing everything that's going on. But let's go to macro.
I like the UBI topic slash employment topic. I think it's one that doesn't get talked about all that much. I mean, it does get mentioned, obviously, in any Bitcoin related book. It's probably at least one chapter, but um, probably non-controversial take in this space, but it would be more controversial if you're just talking to your everyday person, which is I really think that employment itself or unemployment is truly a thing that only exists when you don't have a hard money system. Because pre Federal Reserve, there was never talk about unemployment really being an issue. But in that world, you also had no federally mandated minimum wage, right? And people were just paid whatever that job was worth. And I know this is an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people because everybody wants people to be able to basically live to a certain standard. But the whole idea behind a truly free market system would be that over time, as the entire system accumulates capital, everybody gradually gets a little bit better off, and that rising tide lifts all ships. And I just think that a lot of this government intervention that occurs where you have, hey, you have to pay people this amount. And this is coming from somebody who obviously talks about all the time um, factories and places like that. If they paid more, then you'd have actual people willing to do that labor. But I think the solution to that is not mandating it via government. It's actually just letting that system work. And I would just make one point for Thomas, and then I'll shut up. Is it doesn't matter what system we build. It doesn't matter what system humans have ever tried. Wealth always ends up as a Pareto distribution. The question is just what are the bottom 90% left with in whatever system that's implemented? And free markets give those people the most out of any system. So the more we move back to that, the better, in my opinion. Now, to your point, it probably moves towards socialism, unfortunately, but we can all hope that that's not where it goes.
Yeah, the poor will always be among us, right? Unfortunately, that's just the nature of our existence.
Yeah, I
But
mean, you can look at Neolithic grave sites, and there's a Pareto distribution among the grave sites of how many beads and trinkets people have, right? Like it's so deeply ingrained into human existence and the universe, period, right? Even like planet mass distribution. Like I just don't think that we can orchestrate a system that will undo that distribution of wealth among the population. All you can do is create a system that gives the most to that bottom 90 percentile.
Lauren, were we going back to Gary?
Sorry, I'm going something. I'm in the little boys' room. Drank a lot of coffee this morning.
Hey
So
guys,
yeah, take it
did,
wherever you
did,
want. Gary,
Yeah.
how are you, sir?
did or is everyone getting along today? Are we all having a good time?
There's only
Yeah,
been
I am
we're
two
having
cage matches, Gary.
an awesome time. So happy Tuesday to everyone. Is the market doing something that I should become spastic about, or
There's 100% tariff on China now as of noon today. So
yeah,
so hopefully, Gary, you aren't storing all of your wealth in restoration hardware that needs China to make all their luxury furniture.
Hey, so
yeah,
what happens with Taiwan with all of this back and forth with U.S. and China?
Taiwan's come to the table, I think. So look, this is whoa, 76,000, man. I can buy $76,000 Bitcoin right now. Wow,
It's the
what's the S&P doing?
it's the patriotic price, Gary.
Is it?
yeah, everyone go smash buy it right now. $10. Come on, guys, we can do it.
Bucks.
VIX
At
is above
least.
50. It's getting spicy.
Yeah. Um, S&P. Uh, what we learned yesterday is that no one knows really what the hell is going on. That's what we learned yesterday. These markets are so unstable. It's hilarious. We are watching history, gentlemen, ladies. We are. We are literally, and I think that's what the arguing is about. I think people are just confused. We're trying to use. Well, this is just my opinion. We're trying to use a bunch of metrics that have been broken for a long, long time, and we've just kind of pretended like most of these metrics actually meant anything, but in fact, they've been changing. Uh, Maybe subtly, maybe really aggressively, but I don't think any of this. I don't think anyone's going to figure out what's going on because we've never been here before. So for me, that's a really cool environment. I do extremely well in these environments when everybody's freaking out. I don't know why, but I do. Um, and I just look at this. Maybe it's time in the market too. I look at this. I'm looking at oil at traded below $60. That is awesome for the consumer. Okay, y'all talk about the bell curve consumer. Look, it's a bell curve, man. I didn't make these rules. And people, based on their education, their circumstances, their parenting, they get to decide where they fit on the bell curve. If you have, any kind of like, look, statistically, it's, you know, very difficult to get to come into life, much less be born on the right part of the planet. I can't fix all these problems. So sometimes I think we're arguing over something that's just not fixable. Um, but I can try to get super rich, protect myself from the demise of what seems to be coming much more rapidly than I would have thought. So is my minute up? Probably expounded my minute. I'll
Who
be
gave
quiet
Gary a
there.
minute?
Bitcoin
I
is
thought,
$76,000.
yeah.
Gary, you're
Allows me
allowed
to
more
make
than a
another
minute.
phone
That's
call and say, hey, how much more can I lean into this thing? So that I'll end there.
Gary, we'll all see you in Vegas, right, next month?
Vegas. Dark, you wanted to weigh in?
Yeah, no, I'd really like to talk about bit bonds, despite Joe's absolute.
Do I need to do the introductions again?
No, look, man,
Now,
I
in the
really
right blue corner, weighing in at 220, ding ding, wearing the red shorts.
look. This is a
Yeah,
Bitcoin
jump in there, buddy.
space, right? And we're looking for solutions to real problems, right? And what we have a multitude of really big problems. One of them is our interest expense. Another is our underfunded pensions. Another is Social Security and Medicaid. which are running out of money quickly, right? And I really truly believe in my heart of hearts that if you want to solve all of those problems with one structure, Bit Bonds gets that done, right? Not only does it lower our borrowing costs, but it substantially improves the yield, right? That the buyers of our bonds, the social securities, the pension funds, the Medicaids, the people that hold U.S. government securities would receive on their investment, right? Like that's just a fact, right? And you can scream and yell and call it a silly idea, right? But the way we're going, the path we're going on, is a silly idea, right? The US dollar is the silliest of silly ideas. A debt-based Ponzi scheme is a tremendously silly idea, right? So when I look at the world of silly ideas, right, I'm trying to look to one that actually has the ability to solve problems. So look, it's easy to come up here on this stage and just whine and complain about all the problems and not present any solutions. I haven't heard many solutions today. I've heard a lot of complaints. I've heard a lot of whining, right? But when you look to solutions, integrating Bitcoin into the government economy is a real solution. I challenge anybody to tell me why Bitcoin bonds, right, integrating Bitcoin into government securities is a bad idea. I'd love to hear it. I'd love to hear why it would fail. Do you?
Before we go to the hands, I think maybe we do stick to hands now because we don't want to end up in a free for all again. So just to keep it a little bit more sane and whatnot, if you do want to get interjected into the conversation, just raise your hand, and one of the co-hosts will make sure that that you get put in. We got some new speakers, so we're eager to hear from the new folks. Macro.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, like, I think the difference is what we were talking about earlier was like, what do you do for that bottom half? And I just don't know that bit bonds are a direct solution for that bottom half, except for perhaps to transition from one system to a new one with while trying to minimize the collateral damage or fallout. I guess I could see it as like indirectly benefiting. But as far as like how do they improve their direct situation in the world, that was kind of my point earlier on the bit bonds thing, is like I don't think somebody who's working at 7-Eleven is going to buy a bit bond, right?
No, they're going to benefit from the bit bond, right? The concept that you can improve the government's balance sheet, since we are in a debt-based Ponzi scheme, and I think we all kind of understand that you can't pay down the debt, you can't reduce it, right? So what can you do? You can improve the balance sheet, right? If you improve the balance sheet, that gives you the funds to pay for education, to pay for training, to pay for a litany of government services that today we can't afford. So no, directly it does not affect the person that's working at 7-Eleven, but indirectly, if you improve the government's balance sheet substantially, the government then has money to sponsor training programs, to do real infrastructure spending, right? There's a lot of things we could do if we had the money, but we don't have the money today. Our interest payments are too high, right? Our outlay of spending is too high. The stress that Medicaid and Social Security, underfunded pensions are going to put on the system are extreme. So you have to address those issues. If you address those issues and you improve the balance sheet, then you're in a good position to actually invest in your people. So that's how macro.
What do we got, Luke?
Yeah, I think a really, really big part of it too is just education from a young age about how this whole system works and how you need to buy assets. I mean, I didn't learn about this stuff until I was way out of high school, and I mean that should be
Last year.
yeah, yeah, one yesterday. But no, I mean, imagine how much better off everyone would be in America if you had like financial literacy coming out of high school or even younger. I mean, I feel like education would be a massive help to teach people what to do with their money and how to save and all the basics invest.
I think Simon's next.
Yeah, let me put a question out there. Nothing to do with Bitcoin or anything, but other than because you were told to in the indoctrination of everything needs to be privatized, would you do you think in retrospect it was a mistake to privatize oil and not, if you look at the countries that have got the surpluses today, it's because oil is used in the national interest and it reduces the amount of tax you need to pay. But do you think a country actually utilizing its resources and sharing it to reduce the amount of tax one needs to pay, do you think in retrospect that was just a kind of psyop of everything needs to be privatized and we believe in capitalism only? Or do you think you might have given away the crown jewel that I guess many of the countries that are utilizing that resource for their people have now built sovereign wealth? Any takers?
Justin, did you want to chime in? I think Justin wanted to respond.
This is Justin, not Justin. Actually, I don't think he's up here. I think he's requesting. I think our stage is full. So let's try to shuffle
But
things around a little bit.
give me any answer of why that wouldn't be a better way of organizing an economy, other than Milton Friedman told me that everything needs to be privatized.
I mean, it hasn't worked a couple of times, right? Like if we go historically, you can look at like Venezuela, for example.
Yeah,
You
but
had
that's
some
because
massive.
America wouldn't let them use it. It was because it was forced not to be able to use it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Every single country that isn't able to use their resources is because America said you're not allowed to compete, and so they made sure they couldn't be used. But the
And that
ones
was
that
the
do use
same.
them,
That was the same deal with Iraq too, right? Like after we went in Iraq, the deal is that now you have to have these multinational corporations that are kind of in charge of pulling out the oil and refining it.
well, that's why
Um,
Putin became popular, because George Soros and all the American corporate raiders wanted to privatize everything, and he wanted to use the resources for Russians, and that's why he became so popular, because he arrested all of the like Western corporate raiders and just kept the assets for his people. Just saying, America had a lot of assets there.
Sorry, I'm multitasking. I know Terence is probably still trying to figure out his seed phrase for his upcoming speech tonight at the college, at the university down there. Tom,
I'd like to. That's an interesting conversation, though. Does anyone else have anything to chime in on that? I feel like stage is awfully quiet here.
Hey, can I just say
Justin,
one thing real quick?
Justin made it up here. Yeah, go ahead, sir.
Hey, sorry, I was having some spotty connection issues. I just wanted to, I'm not going to like go all into it because we still have an NDA on a lot of it and I don't want to say anything I'm not supposed to. But as far as what Dark was saying about how it's going to help the bottom percentage of people, if you guys haven't heard of my company, People's Reserve, our founder, CJ, we have a bunch of products. If you go watch his video specifically on self-repaying mortgages, like that's one product that we have that it's not exactly a Bitcoin bond, but it's kind of similar in how it's structured. And I mean, this can take like hundreds, almost $1,000 off of your uh, monthly mortgage without any home ownership risk. Um, I highly recommend just go watch a video on his YouTube account. And I mean, that's just one way, but there's definitely ways that it can help. Just like muni Bitcoin bonds. Just I'm telling you, the next year or two, you're going to see so many different products come out that can be beneficial to that population. That was it.
Thanks, Justin. I think Justin slipped $50 to Terence to slip that advert in there.
No, I don't mean to shill. I honestly, like, I believe in the product.
Justin,
Yeah,
are
I
you
think
guys coming out with a sort of a structured product using U.S. Treasuries, like similar to a Bitcoin bond, but a privately issued one?
Yes, we are doing something. Yep, and we go live. I don't want to shill. I just go check out CJ. You know, like, there are ways. There's other
you
people that are doing the same thing too. Like,
yeah, you got Rochard who came out.
I
Is he
saw that.
directly competing with you guys then? Is that what he's doing too?
I mean, I think there's a few different. I think he's doing something similar, but I didn't really look into it. I just saw that
Hey,
little.
have you? What is the demand like? That yeah, I assume you've been speaking to institutions. Have you
Yeah,
seen demand for these products?
I mean, I don't know exactly. Again, I'm kind of just like in the background, but from what I'm told, is we have a lot of demand. I'll just put it that way. I don't want to like get in trouble saying anything I'm not supposed to.
Sure. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. The muzzle comes off soon, and I mean, it's going to be
Take the
exciting.
muzzle off, Justin.
I'll
Hey,
see.
Terrence.
I'll see you guys at Bitcoin conference in Vegas with my team.
Yeah,
Hey,
sounds
come
great,
back when the
man.
muzzle's off and we'll chat
Come
Uh,
because
back when the
that'll be a
muzzle's
fun
all
off.
convo.
right. Thanks, guys.
It's a great 80s band. Terrence, what do you think, sir? You think it's a good time? We kind of have a lull. The wind is kind of taken out of the sails a little. We usually try to wind these things down about 11, yeah, between 10:30 and 11, depending on who's hosting and whatnot. Terrence, are you there? Are you still working on
Yes.
those words? Should
No.
we take it around the horn and maybe wind this baby down? What do you say?
I say yes. Let's take the boat into dock. Um,
You want to pitch tomorrow real quick?
yeah, tomorrow we've got, for those of you who don't know, we have Troy Cross joining us, which should be awesome. He's a great human being, and he's responsible for me personally learning a lot about Bitcoin mining and how it interacts with the environment and energy. And I'm sure a lot of you know him. He's been on all the big podcasts, but he's joining us tomorrow. So that's fantastic. The Bitcoin is for Everyone group that's running the festival up there, the conference on August 1st, has helped bring him on to the space tomorrow. So hope you guys have some good questions. I'm sure Gary will. Anyone who's into mining and energy, and he's also working on a lot of other things with the Bitcoin Policy Institute. So bring your questions. But yeah, let's go to macro as we close out, as we go around the horn.
No, great conversation. Always fun. Thanks for having me up. I don't have anything specific today.
How about you, Dark?
Yeah, I simply want to say that, like, I really do believe Bitcoin fixes a lot, not all, but a lot of our structural economic problems. And it blows my mind to come into Bitcoin spaces and get laughed at for trying to propose, what I think are common sense solutions to some of the structural problems posed by, the debt Ponzi scheme. And I apologize for getting hot, but at some point, like, just whining and crying about problems does nothing, right? And proposing actual real world solutions, whether you like them or not, that's the way forward. So I'll just land the plane there.
How about you, Joe? Any last thoughts for this space?
Yeah, I think it's really important before you try to propose solutions that you understand what the problem is and how to focus it. I'm not going to get into a pissing match here, but I think bet bonds make absolutely no sense. And the reason why, just very briefly, and we can have a separate space on this, Dark, if you want, is that any institution, anybody right now, that can go buy Bitcoin, and they don't have to buy it attached to a bond. There's absolutely no reason why they would need to. If they want to go buy
That's
fixed
just not
income, the
true.
U.S.
But
Hang on, man.
that's
I didn't
not
interrupt
true.
you.
You that's
So this
not
is why
true. There,
you need the
there,
mute.
you know
This is
how
why you
much
need the mute
capital? Do
button.
you know how much capital can only
Yeah.
buy bonds? Do you know how many trillions of dollars?
Correct. And do you know if you attach a Bitcoin to it, the bond becomes it's not a high quality liquid asset, so it doesn't satisfy that
Not if it's
capital.
backed by the United
It
States
doesn't
government. It's
satisfy.
not.
Absolutely, absolutely. If you Basel is not run by the United States government, as Simon knows, right? The high quality liquid asset requires it to be sovereign debt pure. Okay, you can't put gold in there. You can't put Apple stock. If you mix and match it, you have to go back to all of the international banking institutions, which Simon says control the world, and you have to get that all rejiggered. So the issuance right now, if you issued
Oh, I got a heart from Simon. That's great. If you go back and try to just do bit bonds today, number one, you undermine the current sovereign debt structure of the United States. You have to completely throw out our ability to borrow from the marketplace unless there's Bitcoin attached. Number two, it doesn't satisfy the regulatory requirements. So this would be a fascinating subject. I'm happy to discuss it at length, but I don't think it makes any sense.
Well, I would love to have that discussion too, because I never hear a plan B. I hear a lot of why we can't do things, and but we're up against it. Unless you don't think we're up
The,
against
the,
it,
the plan
in which
B,
case all is
the
well.
plan B, no, everything is
Yeah,
not well, Puncher. The plan B from all policymakers, right, is effectively kick the can down the road. It's been that way for decades, and that's been the status quo, and that has been what they're trying to do. Now you get a change agent like Donald
yeah.
Trump coming in, who's trying to fix it, trying to think outside the box. And I'm not negative on that. I am skeptical of whether will work. But the idea is that there's the core tenet of the governing class is let's deal with this in 2075.
Yeah, look, like I said before, you could carve more backbone out of a banana than politicians who would love to kick it down the road. The problem is the rest of the road is lined with potholes and crevasses and a lot of death and destruction and avalanches. So that's not a road that we can go down with any sense of like normalcy. So, necessity is the mother of invention. I'll say there. And that will be my closing comment.
Thanks, Puncher. Simon, you want your closing comment now, or are you going to respond? Okay.
Yeah, sure. No, I'd just say, look, in 2010, the world told us that there was no way of getting funding for Bitcoin companies. So we created a platform and got Coinbase, Kraken, Bitstamp, Bitfinex, and many of the largest companies in the world, their seed funding that they needed. In 2011, my lawyers told me that there was no possible way of constructing a Bitcoin bond. We created the first Bitcoin bond, and it was the highest returning investment in history for all of the retirement people that used it. In 2016, the lawyers told us that we have to the Bitfinex has to file for bankruptcy and file for Chapter 11. Instead, we decided to use Bitcoin and create a structured product that was the highest returning investment that beat Bitcoin. And in 2015, we decided to create a VC fund that combines private equity, Bitcoin, and Bitcoin mining. And the lawyer said it really wasn't possible to do it. So all I'd say is that Trump has created absolute carnage globally, and an economist called Schumpeter taught us that there's this concept called creative destruction. And in destruction, you have to be the most creative. And so I think it would be an absolute waste of probably one of the most craziest times that we've all lived for if the solution was just to return to the status quo, and like Bitcoin bonds and various other things. Even if they don't work, I think there's many things, and I think when we have been advocating for Bitcoin, I've been doing it since 2011. I think every lawyer in the world that I ever spoke to told me why Bitcoin wouldn't succeed, and now they're all helping their clients create products around Bitcoin.
Thanks, Simon. Let's go to Thomas and then Robert. All right, let's go to Robert and then maybe Thomas.
Yeah, I don't have a ton to say. I would just point people to the bond market. The 30 years up almost 10 basis points. The long end of the yield curve is absolutely puking. Yeah, I don't know. I know we were talking about it earlier, and Joe doesn't think there's a ton of signal in this, but given that it is now, the yield is now higher than when the largest tariffs in over 100 years were implemented, causing the largest negative growth shock that we've seen since COVID. I think that the fact that the 30 years is now yield is now higher, yeah, it's something. I think it's probably the thing to watch.
Hey, Terence, I would close it out and just say this. Something's going to happen the back half of this week. Something's going to happen next week. And something's going to happen the week after that. And it makes it very hard to sit here and ascertain where things are at and where they're going, because these things that I'm speaking of in the abstract are things that are going to surprise large portions of the market, including me.
Yeah, totally agree. How about you, Cosmo? And then we'll go to Gary.
Yeah, I think I can't remember who said it earlier, but this is probably one of the more confusing markets I've ever seen. So many mixed opinions. Nobody really agrees. There's a few things we do know and can agree on, though, and that's that there will only be 21 million. We're going to have a block about every 10 minutes, and that you should hold your Bitcoin in self custody. So I'll just leave you guys with that.
Amen. And it looks like Gary dropped Loren, so I'll hand it back to you, and then I'll see you
Hey,
tomorrow.
everybody. Yeah, no, hey, amazing stuff. I really like hashing through all of this content. Super intriguing. Definitely love when, we all have differences of opinion. Hopefully we're here and check our egos at the door so that we can actually find the truth instead of trying to prove that we are right. So, what a time to be alive, man. I'm excited because there's a lot of positive energy in the air, and that's what I want to focus on. In my life, it seems like I get what I focus on, and I've kind of been pessimistic and whatnot, but I really want to start focusing on the positive stuff, work on myself, being a better person, just being better for my family, my immediate circle, the loved
A
ones
lot of
closest
room
to
for
me.
that. Yeah, definitely,
You
definitely.
know
Yeah.
it.
Oh,
No, you know it. I could be an a-hole and it shows in this room at times. So for sure, I'm trying, but super excited. Thanks for the vote of confidence, Terrence. Remember Vegas, guys. I'm super excited to try to meet as many fellow plebs as possible, because that's where I really like when I've only been to like 3 of these different conference things. When I have gone, I've really gotten the most, not out of sitting, listening to speakers, but to shaking hands, having a drink with people, just hanging out, making those connections of people that have like minds. So I'm
sounds
really
like you
looking
just have
forward.
a drinking problem. Is what it really
Well,
sounds
that
like.
too.
Okay.
It's not quite a puppy level type deal, but it's, I love excuses to share a beer with a fellow Bitcoiner. So one more thing I just wanted to pitch, which is we've been getting requests to because a lot of people like these spaces and they want to listen to them later, but they don't want to sign into X. They also want to listen to them on 2 times speed because there's a lot of good stuff in here, but there's also hours and hours just full of absolute crap. So we're in the process of
But
just.
did you know China's gone to 104% tariffs
Yeah,
now?
that's crazy, huh?
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of those jokes where they just keep going up and up and up and up till it just becomes such an unreasonable thing that it just becomes stupid, kind of
Wait,
like the
this will
national
sound
debt.
stupid. How do you have 104%?
You tariff it at 100% and
Oh,
It's
not
you're
yeah,
let
about
it
to
for more.
find out, Terrence.
I think that.
I'll see your 104 and
Yeah,
raise you
when Joe was
104.
reading that news and then that 104% came out, I think anybody who was watching the Bitcoin price in USD and whatnot saw it just start tanking right about the time that news started breaking. So
Sorry, Lauren, you were closing out and telling us
I was
about when
trying
you
to go on a
re-listen to
happy
the
note. Thanks,
space over and
Simon.
over again. What happens? Yeah, yeah.
Debbie Downer had to weigh in, and I'm joking. No, I'm thankful that we have found Bitcoin and realized that hey, there is some concrete under our feet. We have a foundation to build the future upon. So thank God for that. Or I would be freaking out and looking at the 401k plan and calling the financial advisor with fear in my voice. So thankfully, none of that. So love these spaces, love all these fine folks in here. And if you haven't, jump up on the stage and share your thoughts. There's a lot of brilliant minds just listening down there. I'll shut up now.
And
Have a
plus
great day.
you.
Bye.
200% tariffs on Bitcoin coming.
Yes.
All these fine folks, but not the neo-Nazis.
We need some play it out music or something, like we've got some intro music coming. We have somebody working on some intro music specifically for us, and maybe we'll try to get some exit music as well. Yeah.
Hey, Lauren, anybody think that we're going to finish red today or green in the stock
Oh,
markets?
geez. Blood red, buddy. Blood red.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there.
Peace out,
Okay.
everybody. Have a great day.
Adios. Adios,
Lauren,
amigos.
close it out with Nessun Dorma.
Go ahead. You can sing it for us.
I'm not able to do that.
Orange Tuesday.